All right. Notice is hereby given of the regular meeting of the Board of Education of the Town of Westfield in the County of Union, New Jersey at 6 p.m. on the evening of Tuesday, June 14th, 2022 in Cafeteria B of Westfield High School, 550 Dorian Road, Westfield, New Jersey. The purpose of this meeting is to transact the regular business of the board and to transact any other business to come properly before the board. This is to advise the general public and to instruct that it be recorded in the minutes that in compliance with Chapter 231 of the Public Laws of 1975, entitled the Open Public Meetings Act, the Westfield School Board on Thursday, June 9th, 2022, caused to be posted at the office of the Board of Education located at 302 Elm Street, Westfield, New Jersey, and delivered to the Westfield Leader, the Star Ledger, the Westfield Library, Town Clerk of Westfield, Tap Into Westfield, and Patch.com, a meeting notice setting forth the time, date, and location of this meeting. Dana, can I have a roll call?
Sahar Aziz, Robinaccio,
Here.
Michael Beelan, Brendan Galligan,
Here.
Layla Morelli,
Here.
Sonal Patel,
Here.
Amy Root,
Here.
Kristen Sonic-Schmeltz, Mary Wickens.
Here.
Thank you. Amy, will you lead us in a flag salute? Thank you, Amy. Announcements. Mary, do you have any announcements in front of you tonight?
No.
Okay. Sonal? All right, I guess if there are any announcements, they'll be made next week. We'll move right into the recognition of the Optimist Club. Let me pull up. Yeah, please.
So I'll get us started this evening, beginning with just comments that recognize the importance of being able to celebrate the accomplishments of our students and staff, really being one of the highlights of a superintendent experience. And this evening, we continue what we began last month after we celebrated Washington's fifth grade teacher, Matthew Cognetti, as the recipient of the Rotary Club of Westfield's Phil Hauer Award in recognition of outstanding teaching at the elementary level. Tonight, we welcome the recipients of awards of excellence at the secondary level. Edison Gifted Education Teacher, Esther Van Riper, and Roosevelt Math Teacher, Christine Heisler, have been recognized as outstanding intermediate school educators by the Optimist Club of Westfield. The Optimist Club presents an award annually to two educators, one each from Edison and Roosevelt, to give deserving credit to those who teach students during this critical stage of adolescence. We are grateful to the Optimist Club for their continued support of our students and staff. The Westfield High School community also has a long tradition of recognizing staff members for their dedication and devotion to their students. This year's recipients are production manager Matt DeFabio, English teacher Elizabeth Palomara, and social studies teacher Kim Leegan and Ryan Daly. Ryan will be recognized for his award at next week's board meeting on June 21st, at which, as the coach of the boys golf team, he and the team will also be recognized for their tremendous season as well. We begin first with our Optimist Award winners. I will invite Edison Principal Dr. Matthew Bolton to say a few words about Mrs. Van Riper, and our board president, Brendan Galligan, will then read a resolution before inviting Mrs. Van Riper up to the podium. Dr. Bolton.
Thank you, Dr. Gonzalez. The Optimist Club for providing this recognition to our district's intermediate school teachers. This is an important award that is bestowed annually to two truly outstanding educators. I'd also like to thank Dr. Gonzalez and the Board of Education for allowing us time tonight to recognize our fantastic intermediate school educators. I'm honored to introduce Mrs. Esther Van Riper. Mrs. Van Riper has been a teacher in the gifted program at Edison Intermediate School for the past 15 years. I'm sorry, I said a teacher in the gifted program. Esther is really the teacher in the gifted program. In addition to her teaching role, she is the gifted program curriculum writer, scheduler, organizer, bus monitor, and general advocate for all things involving gifted students in our district. Edison School has the privilege of hosting the district's gifted program. This means that when the transition from elementary to middle school comes, gifted students who attend Northside schools must make a difficult decision. Do I leave my home school and all that I'm comfortable with to attend the gifted program at Edison, or do I stay? I can honestly tell you in the 10 years that as principal of Edison School, I don't know that there is a single student who has made that tough decision that has regretted it. And the primary reason for the success of these students is Esther Van Riper and her caring, thoughtful, and expert approach to teaching gifted students. I cannot think of another teacher who is more deserving of this recognition. Congratulations, Esther.
All right. I'd like to read a resolution on behalf of the board. Resolution by the Board of Education of Westfield, New Jersey, to Esther Van Riper, Intermediate School Teacher of the Year, 2021-2022. Whereas the Optimist Club of Westfield, a supporter of schools and children in the community for many years, has established an annual award for outstanding teaching in the intermediate schools. And whereas this award is a fitting tribute to the importance of teaching in the intermediate grades and the notability of the teaching profession. And whereas Esther Van Riper, a gifted education teacher at Edison Intermediate School, has been awarded the 24th Annual Intermediate School Outstanding Teacher of the Year Award for outstanding teaching, interest in children, and continued pursuit of professional growth. And whereas nominations received on behalf of Esther Van Riper praise her extraordinary classroom environment, where introducing new and more complicated topics, she explains in a way that is easy to understand. Now therefore be it resolved that this Board of Education publicly expresses appreciation to the Optimist Club of Westfield for establishing this award, and that this Board of Education sincerely congratulates Esther Van Riper, representing Edison Intermediate School, for receiving the 2022 Outstanding Teacher of the Year Award, a significant honor and a notable accomplishment, and that a copy of this resolution be presented to Esther Van Riper on June 14, 2022, and a copy of this formal resolution become part of the permanent records of Westfield, New Jersey Board of Education. Congratulations, Esther. Now, if you'd like to make some brief remarks.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Bolton, Dr. Gonzalez, and the Board of Education. I want to thank the Optimist Club for establishing this award to recognize the work of intermediate school teachers and the difference they make in the lives of their students. Growing up in a family of 4 children, it is often hard not to compare yourself to your siblings. Looking back, I admire the way in which my parents were able to help us identify our individual abilities and assist us in fostering our areas of strength. They instilled and mirrored for us that hard work and effort will lead you to success. During my undergraduate studies at the College of New Jersey, and my co-recipient is also an alumni from, one of our professors said simply yet profoundly, know your kids. He echoed the statement throughout the semester, and it resonated with me. When I recall the teachers who I felt made a significant impact on my life and my development, 2 common threads stood out. They took a genuine interest in who I was as a person, and each created a learning environment in which I could build relationships with my peers and learn more about myself. A good teacher is able to foster and build relationships with their students and between their students because they know their kids. When you are able to cultivate an environment in which the individual is valued, trust, learning, and growth flourish. As I listened to Dr. Bolton when he addressed our school to announce the Optimist Club Award recipient, his description could have fit any one of the outstanding educators in our building at EIS. I am fortunate to work in many of our school buildings alongside talented, caring, and dedicated educators and administrators. As one of our district's gifted educators, I teach our elementary students in the 3rd through 5th grade pull-out program. I teach our intermediate gifted elective courses to our 6th and 7th grade students, and my debate students would be yelling at me right now for my poor debate decorum with you. And I help to provide enrichment services to our 3rd and 4th grade students in the elementary buildings. Next year will be my 20th year teaching. I will get to know a new group of third grade students, and in the same year, I will savor the last lessons and class moments with my seventh graders. My kids remind me why continuous learning, revisions, and reflection on curriculum, lesson plans, and methods of instruction are integral aspects to good teaching. I hope that in turn, my students feel valued and that they enjoy learning through challenges, failures, and successes, and that our experience together will give them the confidence to go further than they ever thought possible. My students are my primary focus and motivation, and they are the reason why I work so hard and why each year I want to get to know my kids. Thank you so much for this awesome award.
Congratulations. Dr. Bolton, will you join?
Okay, next up is Roosevelt Principal Brian Geckman, who will speak about Mrs. Heisler before Mr. Galligan reads a resolution, and we hear from Mrs. Heisler as well. Mr. Geckman.
Good evening. I'd like to take a moment to thank Dr. Gonzalez, the Westfield Board of Education, and the Optimist Club for once again recognizing excellence in education. I'd also like to congratulate Ms. Van Riper. And now on to Christine Heisler. Working at Roosevelt School for close to 10 years, I've had the opportunity to observe some excellent teachers. One of these teachers who I put on the top of the list is Christine Heisler. Her ability to relate to our sixth grade students has allowed her year after year to create a warm and caring atmosphere for all learners. Her calm demeanor allows her students to feel comfortable and willing to take risks in her classroom. The passion in her voice and enthusiasm she brings to class each day, her love for math, and her ability to relate and gain the trust of her students year after year are a few things that come to mind when describing her. Christine is known for her ability to take calculated risks and differentiate her instruction for all learners. As we sat with the Optimist Club members reviewing all the written letters, it was great to see your current students, your former students, current and former parents, as well as colleagues write on your behalf. The underlining theme for all of these letters was something called Period Zero. As many of you know, our school has a 9-period day starting with Period 1, not in Christine's classroom. Each morning before school starts, Christine had a packed class for Period Zero. This time is used for extra help sessions and review of previous material for absent students. Your students and their families are beyond appreciative for this time you offered. As a former teacher, Christine is the colleague everyone would love to share a department or grade level with. She's a team player, and her lessons are always perfectly structured and organized. As an administrator, Christine is the teacher I'm proud to have in my building. She is willing to take educational risks, and she's always there for her students. And as a parent of 3 boys, Christine is the type of teacher I wish they can have one day. She creates a warm and caring environment that allows all learners to thrive. Christine, congratulations on this well-deserved award.
I'd like to read a resolution. Resolution by the Board of Education of Westfield, New Jersey, to Christine Heisler, Intermediate School Teacher of the Year, 2021-2022. Whereas the Optimist Club of Westfield, a supporter of schools and children and the community for many years, has established an annual award for the outstanding teaching in intermediate schools, and whereas this award is a fitting tribute to the importance of teaching in the intermediate grades and the notability of the teaching profession. And whereas Christine Heisler, a mathematics teacher at Roosevelt Intermediate School, has been awarded the 24th Annual Intermediate School Outstanding Teacher of the Year Award for outstanding teaching, interest in children, and the continued pursuit of professional growth. And whereas nominations received on behalf of Christine Heisler expressed appreciation for her kindness, dedication, and positive attitude as a teacher who, quote, makes math fun and understandable for her students, and who, quote, makes herself available for her students before and after school. Now therefore be it resolved that this Board of Education publicly expresses appreciation to the Optimist Club of Westfield for establishing this award, and that this Board of Education sincerely congratulates Christine Heisler for representing Roosevelt School for receiving the 2022 Outstanding Teacher of the Year Award, a significant honor and notable accomplishment, and that this resolution be presented to Christine Heisler on June 14th, 2022, and that a copy of this formal resolution becomes part of the permanent records of Westfield, New Jersey Board of Education. Congratulations, Christine.
Good evening. Thank you, Dr. Gonzalez and members of the Board of Education for welcoming us all here tonight. And thank you to the Optimist Club of Westfield for recognizing passionate educators in our intermediate schools. Thank you to our principal at Roosevelt, Dr. Getman, to Mr. Brunson, our assistant principal, and to Mrs. D'Alessandro, our department supervisor. I am grateful for how you inspire us to grow professionally and encourage our staff to bring innovative learning experiences into our classrooms. To my colleagues at Roosevelt, thank you for being the most nurturing and supportive teammates. And to my peers across the Westfield schools, thank you for the ways you inspire a love of learning in our students. It is an incredible honor to be recognized for this award. Truth be told, Roosevelt Intermediate School is full of hardworking and dedicated professionals who work tirelessly to ensure that the children of Westfield have a stimulating and supportive environment in which to learn. I'm humbled by this honor and grateful for the privilege to serve the families of Westfield in this way. My tenure here began 19 years ago, when at a college career fair, I had the opportunity to discuss educational philosophy with the principal and mathematics supervisor at the time. I was so impressed with Westfield's community values that I could not have been more excited to receive the phone call at my college graduation offering me a 6th grade teaching position. I've been a 6th grade math teacher here ever since. Throughout the years, Westfield has taught me that being a great teacher is easy when you have such great students to work with. Our students are top-notch. It's an honor and privilege to watch the young and nervous faces of these children as they enter middle school for the first time turn into those of strong, confident leaders as they exit those same doors in 8th grade. While I may have to remind them more than a few times to file their papers properly in their binders while they sit in my room, your children remind me how beautiful youth is and how quickly time flies. By 8th grade graduation, they're young adults with neatly organized binders and mature goals and dreams. Middle school passes in the blink of an eye, yet in that time, caterpillars blossom into butterflies. I can still remember the moment I decided to become a teacher. As a senior in high school, the Student Council sponsored Senior Switch Day, a day to promote school spirit among the graduating class. Mr. Muller let me take over his Algebra 1 class, and I can honestly say from that point forward, I never considered another career path. Teaching is a calling, and teaching for me just fit. When I reflect on my own school years, I realize I had some of the most amazing teachers. I'm so grateful for the relationships that I formed, many of which have sustained the test of time. In fact, when I first received this recognition, I reached out to my student teaching mentor to ask for her guidance and help. My entire career, I aspired to be the kind of teacher Mrs. Nugent was. She was proficient in her subject matter, but made every child feel special. Expectations were high in all of her classes, but she shared a mutual respect with her students. She understood that middle schoolers need guidance as they discover who they are, and she showed kindness towards them as individuals. And for that, her students adored her. Her impact on me as a person and as a professional was significant. So there I stood 20 plus years later, reaching back out to her for the same support I received from her in college. In true teacher form, she was right there for me again. While students cycle through our classrooms year after year, the connections remain. Your children will always be a huge part of our hearts, and we will always be there for them, even decades later. I'd like to conclude by saying thank you to my husband Michael and children Leah and Justin. Their love and support have sustained me, especially through the more difficult years. I love you. To my mom and my sisters who are here tonight, they've always been there for me. And life for us was not always easy, but we always stood stronger together. And to my students, past and present, thank you for inspiring me to be the best teacher I can be. I'm grateful to be part of your life's journey. Thank you, and have a great evening. So it's me.
Congratulations again to our Optimist Club Intermediate Outstanding Teachers of the Year. Now we'll move on to awards for our high school staff.
Yep, there are 4 high school awards: the Robert and Linda Foose Memorial Award, the PTSO Teacher of the Year Award, the Above and Beyond Award, and the Distinguished Teacher of the Year Award. You will hear more about these awards when Mr. Galligan reads each resolution, but first I invite Westfield High School Principal, Mrs. Mary Asfendis, up to speak about these 4 exceptional staff members. Mrs. Asfendis?
Good evening, Dr. Gonzalez, Board of Education, our audience, and most importantly, our distinguished award winners who we are here to recognize tonight. It is my honor tonight to talk about 3 of our staff members. I will recognize Mr. Daly next week, who are recognized for the impact they make on our students and the entire school community. Through the generosity of our PTSO, private family donors, and alumni groups, we are able to recognize 4 exemplary staff members each year. I know how valued and honored each staff member is by this recognition, and we thank the donors who allow us to offer this well-deserved recognition, and also to the Board of Education for allowing us to talk about the staff members tonight. I would like to start this evening by congratulating Ms. Elizabeth Palomara, our 2022 recipient of the Above and Beyond Award. Elizabeth has been teaching English at Westfield High School for 6 years. When you enter her classroom, it is evident that she supports her students and provides them space to express their opinions. She's a vital member of the English department and collaborates with colleagues to innovate curricular resources and provide valuable learning opportunities. Additionally, she provides space for students to explore their passion in English through her advisorship of Folio, which is our literary magazine, which has a coffee house each month, and her crowds are getting almost unmanageable because so many students are interested, so she's done a wonderful job with that. I would like to share some of the words from her nominations. These are from our students. I nominated Ms. Palomara because she goes above and beyond in making me and my classmates understand the material, makes English a fun and great class to be in, gives great advice and feedback, and is an all-around fun teacher to be around. Another nominator noted, she has made extraordinary assistance to all of her students by giving them space to privately discuss their issues, stress, lack of sleep, etc. She also does her best to help her students manage their stress and assignments through collaboration and flexibility. especially surrounding due dates. There is not another teacher I have met that would be as concerned and as accommodating as Ms. Palomara. She truly supports her struggling students and is well deserving of the 2022 Above and Beyond Award. Our Robert and Linda Foos Award winner is Mr. Matthew DeFabio. Mr. DeFabio works tirelessly behind the scenes of our school productions and concerts. He uses his depth of knowledge in all areas of theater and production to be a positive mentor and role model for his students. The stage tech and crew have grown significantly under his guidance, and his focus is on helping students learn and do their best. When Mr. DeFabio joined us in 2018, none of us could have imagined how he could reimagine his position to support phenomenal virtual productions and allow the students to have a theater program during a pandemic. He even lit up our school in blue lights to celebrate the class of 2020 when they couldn't celebrate in person. A student nominator described him as a person who has done everything and more to make this school amazing for all us students. He has always put 110% of himself into his work, and it always turns out amazing. He truly honors everything this school should stand for, and if the world had more people like him, then it would be a perfect place. Another nominator commented, "He's such a positive person. Even on a dreary Monday during this impossibly challenging year, he comes in happy and is excited. He is the type of person where you can tell he loves what he does." Congratulations, Matt DeFabio, on our Foos Award. And finally, I am happy to recognize Ms. Kimberly Leegan as Westfield High School's 2022 Distinguished Teacher of the Year. She is truly deserving of this award. She provides valuable, real-life learning experiences in her humanities, mock trial, and women's studies classes. It is clear that her philosophy centers on problem solving, as well as directing learning towards action. Whether it is fundraising for Haiti or learning more about the Ukraine conflict in after-school events, she provides students many opportunities to learn and then to make our world a better place. A perfect example is just today, the last day of classes. She invited a few administrators to her classroom to a student-led presentation on how to develop peer mentoring programs. I would be remiss if I also did not commend her on her leadership of our No Place for Hate initiative, which has provided countless opportunities for our students and school community to learn how to combat bias and hate in our school community. A few words from her nomination. The way she presents information makes you feel as though she's teaching you specifically. She has a talent for making you feel heard and understood. The way her class is designed, all of your questions are answered, everything is made clear to you, and she's always there to help if you need anything. In addition to her amazing teacher, she's involved in countless, and that's true, extracurricular clubs that help better society. She helps direct Westfield towards excellence through her work with No Place for Hate, student government, PAL tutoring, and multiple other clubs she helps to support. I'm truly honored to recognize Ms. Kimberly Leegan as our 2022 Westfield High School's Distinguished Teacher of the Year. Congratulations to Elizabeth, Matt, and Kim, and we look forward to honoring Mr. Ryan Daly next week. Congratulations.
Resolution by the Board of Education of Westfield, New Jersey to Matthew DeFabio. Whereas the Robert and Linda Foos Memorial Award has been established annually to recognize a member of the Westfield High School staff for excellence in education, and whereas this award, whose namesakes were a former principal of Westfield High School and a former teacher, has been conferred upon Matthew DeFabio, and whereas Matthew DeFabio is recognized for his dedication as a production manager to the Westfield High School theater program, his positive and kind attitude, his innovative use of technology, and for making students feel, quote, feel as though we were making an impact. Now, therefore, be it resolved that this Board of Education publicly congratulates Matthew DeFabio for receiving the 2022 Robert and Linda Foos Memorial Award, a significant honor and a notable accomplishment, and that this resolution be presented to Matthew DeFabio on June 14th, 2022, and that a copy of this formal resolution becomes part of the permanent records of the Westfield, New Jersey Board of Education. Congratulations, Matt. And before you come to the podium, or as you're coming up to the podium, this is my 10th year on the board. That means between our 4 high school staff members, the 2 intermediate staff members, and the elementary teacher of the year, I've been a part of recognizing 70 staff members. I'm also a graduate of Westfield High School, and this is the first time I get to give an award to a friend of mine from high school, Matt DeFabio. So congratulations, Matt.
Good evening. I'd like to begin by congratulating all the other recipients here tonight. I've had the honor to work with you, with many of you on other projects and productions, and it's really no surprise that you guys are here receiving recognition, well-deserved recognition tonight. So, congratulations. I am beyond honored to be the recipient of this year's Robert and Linda Foose Memorial Award. This year marks my 17th year with the school district, 4 years as the district production manager, and 13 years as a student. When I had been appointed to the newly created full-time district production manager position 4 years ago, I could not even begin to imagine the rewarding experiences I would encounter along the way. Yes, there was a very obvious void. 3 highly used facilities consisting of several systems, microphones, lights, seats, amplifiers, cameras, etc. that need to be maintained and repaired. The other obvious aspects were making sure the spaces were prepared and safe for our students, staff, and community prior to events and day-to-day instruction. As some may be aware, prior to the creation of that full-time production management position, the performance facilities were handled by contractors and technical director stipend positions. This, as you could imagine, resulted in inconsistency, broken equipment, and a lot of disorganization and chaos. I knew I was walking into a large project and an uphill battle of giving our school community the best experiences they can have in our performing arts centers. What I truly did not foresee was just how much of an impact this position would have allowed for our students beyond just the needs of the facility. I've come to realize this is more and more, I realize this more and more after each of the challenges, failures, and success from our district productions. Getting through pandemics, doing crazy, insane projects, and really, things happen, you do events, things break. We have to work together as a team, and our students are very integral in that process. So, to my students, I'm going to turn because I'm sure many of them might be watching. I am so incredibly proud of you. We've taken on challenges beyond anything the classroom has taught us. We have failed time and time again, and yet, in the end, we persevere. We walk away from productions and projects we can be proud of. A collaboration we have built strong relationships through and endured lessons that will last a lifetime. Continue to make yourselves proud and make the most of every opportunity life affords you with. To the Board of Education, while I understand the district is in a situation where they cannot afford the district production manager position to continue at this point in time, I urge you, please, keep a strong pulse on the needs of our students. Place strong accountability on our district leadership to ensure our performance facilities and arts programs are working for our students and not solely for the budget. I trust that you will find the proper balance. And to my colleagues, I know coming to work in today's climate is not easy, but I have encountered some of the finest and most intelligent individuals working here in this district. You do not get nearly enough credit for everything you do. I, too, am so incredibly proud of each of you. Thank you for the experience and knowledge you have graced me with, and please, my fellow colleagues, take care of yourselves. And lastly, to my family, I would not be the person I am standing here before you today. You are my rock and my core support system. I mean, I'm the son of a teacher and an electrician, so I guess the skill sets I have are kind of a combination of the both. And to my beautiful wife of 2 weeks so far, recently married. Thank you. Thank you for the long talks and chats and just working through all the things that need to be spoken about. And it's really important to have those individuals in your life to be able to connect with on such a high level. I am, once again, beyond honored to be receiving this award on this evening. Congrats again to everyone receiving recognition tonight, and thank you all. Have a wonderful evening.
Congratulations again, Matt. And now we're moving on to recognizing Elizabeth Palomara. Resolution by the Board of Education of Westfield, New Jersey to Elizabeth Palomara. Whereas the Westfield High School Above and Beyond Award has been established to annually recognize a teacher or counselor who has truly made a difference in the life of a student, either socially, emotionally, or academically. And whereas this award is presented to Elizabeth Palomara, a dedicated English teacher at Westfield High School who is lauded as an educator who makes English fun and who helps her students manage their stress and assignments through collaboration and flexibility. Now therefore be it resolved that this Board of Education publicly congratulates Elizabeth Palomara for receiving the 2022 Westfield High School Above and Beyond Award, a significant honor and notable accomplishment, and that this resolution be presented to Elizabeth Palomara on June 14th, 2022, and that a copy of this formal resolution becomes part of the permanent records of the Westfield, New Jersey Board of Education. Congratulations.
Hi. I'm going to turn a little too. I'm so grateful this thing has wheels. You know when you're writing on the board and your back is turned to your class? Okay. I have to say, the best part of winning this award has been hearing just some of the kind things that some of my students wrote about me. I always say that it's not imitation that's the best form of flattery, but praise from teenagers. I am so grateful to be recognized for this award. I would like to let you know, if you are looking for ways to go above and beyond in your own life, just become a teacher. In fact, I hear there's a nationwide shortage right now. Teaching! What a singular profession. Your stomach grumbles on the drive home and you realize you forgot to eat lunch again because you were running around every free minute getting help for a kid who you found crying in a staircase. Or you were sourcing a full class set of safety scissors from half a dozen coworkers for an activity you dreamed up. Or what about when teachers agree to chaperone an event that starts uncomfortably close to their bedtime? Starts, not ends. And I am grateful during every lockdown drill that we practice protocol in case disaster strikes. But this, of course, makes teachers unique in that we regularly rehearse what would be the greatest trauma of our lives. We stand in the dark corner of our classrooms with 25 children we care about deeply, silent and patient while that red light flashes over us. We make sure those kids feel protected. We appear calm even if inside we're running through the worst possible scenarios. And then when the drill is over, we pick up our lesson right where we left off. You've already heard this a couple of times tonight, but honestly, I witnessed most of my colleagues going above and beyond all over the building every day of the work week. That's because for teachers, the opportunities to go above and beyond are pretty much limitless, which means it's knowing and communicating our own limits that becomes the real work for us. I wonder how many of us educators would qualify for the Prioritizing Your Mental Health Award, the Ate Lunch Every Day This Week Award, the Emotionally Present at Home Award. It turns out those are the really difficult lessons. And every day there's a pop quiz. I'm 9 years into my teaching career with all my graduations behind me, but most days I feel more of a student now than I ever was before. Ah, the English teacher, waxing poetic. At any rate, thank you for this thank you. It's so meaningful. The precocious little girl in me is taking off her glasses and jumping up and down. It's been a particularly difficult year for me behind the scenes, and this has been such a welcome surprise. Thank you.
And lastly, this evening, we recognize Kimberly Leegan. Resolution by the Board of Education of Westfield, New Jersey to Kimberly Leegan. Whereas the Distinguished Teacher of the Year Award has been established to annually recognize a teacher who, through both excellence in teaching and a demonstrated commitment to the intellectual pursuits beyond the classroom, serves as a model and inspiration to the high school community to strive towards excellence. And whereas this award is presented to Kimberly Leegan, a dedicated social studies teacher at Westfield High School, who's praised by our students for her involvement in many extracurricular clubs that help to better society, and is a phenomenal teacher who, quote, teaches history in a completely different way, presenting that information that, quote, makes you feel as though she's teaching to you specifically. Now, therefore, be it resolved that this Board of Education publicly congratulates Kimberly Leegan for receiving the 2022 Distinguished Teacher of the Year Award, a significant honor and notable accomplishment, and that this resolution be presented to Kimberly Leegan on June 14th, 2022, and that a copy of this formal resolution becomes part of the permanent records of the Westfield, New Jersey Board of Education. Congratulations.
Follow Elizabeth's path and that, so thank you. Good evening. Thank you, Dr. Gonzalez, members of the Board of Education, Principal Asfendis, my supervisor, Andrea, and the members of the Westfield High School community. As some of you may know, my path to teaching was not a straight line. Teaching was a second career for me. I began my career as an attorney, and after practicing law for 12 years, I secretly went back to school at night while vigorously representing the needs of my clients by day. And through New Jersey's alternate route program, I became a certified social studies teacher. When I told my colleagues that I was leaving the practice of law to teach high school social studies, Some of them said, "Wow, that's so brave." And others said, "Wow, that's so crazy." I do not think that I am brave, but maybe I was just brave enough to believe in the crazy notion that the universe was pointing me in the right direction. And now I realize there was a sign. When I was making this career change, my mother gave me a compass necklace, which I am wearing, with a note that said, "I hope that your journey into the field of education will be an adventure that takes you in exciting new directions with your career." I didn't realize at the time how appropriate that gift was. What I have discovered is that teaching is one of the greatest adventures of my life. It has afforded me the opportunity to take deep dives on important topics with my students, collaborate with colleagues to forge new paths in teaching methods, and partner with parents and guardians to help their students navigate high school. Like the compass, I hope that I have helped my students find their way at times or discover a new passion or interest. I hope that I've helped my students, to paraphrase Thoreau, to go confidently in the direction of their dreams and live the life they've imagined. I know that my students, my colleagues, and administrators have helped me to recalibrate at times so that I could teach a destination of learning or understanding in my classrooms. I also know that I'm only on this journey with my students for a relatively brief moment in their lives. Whether it's as a student in one of my classes or a member of a club that I advise or a member of the mock trial team that I coach, it's been the journey that's been so rewarding. This journey has been so exciting because as a social studies teacher, my job is to encourage students to ask questions, to think critically, to learn from people not like them. In short, to explore diverse stories, because that's what history is. It's the stories of people. To quote Nigerian author Chimamanda Adichie, "Stories matter. Many stories matter." And as she said, while stories can dispossess and malign, stories can also empower and humanize. Armed with this knowledge, my students and I get to use this information to make our community, our world, a little bit better. And now you know why I love this job. I am incredibly honored and humbled to receive this award. I want to thank my husband and my children who are here tonight for encouraging me to begin this journey, and the entire Westfield High School community, students, faculty, and staff for being a part of it with me. Thank you.
That concludes our staff recognition for tonight. We will, as was hinted earlier, next week we will be recognizing Matt Daly from the high school staff. Ryan Daly. Thank you. You guys are all welcome to stay if you'd like. I know you guys have other things you'd like to do on this sunny Tuesday. So. We'll wait a minute and reconvene. If any of our high school recipients would like a box for their plaque, I forgot to hand them out. All right. I have one announcement for us tonight. The last Board of Education meeting for the 2021-2022 school year will be held next Tuesday, June 21st, here in Cafeteria B at Westfield High School. The meeting will begin at 6 p.m., with the board members moving immediately into private session. The public portion of the meeting will begin at 7 p.m. The meeting will be live streamed via the district YouTube channel, which viewers can access via the board tab on the district website. The complete agenda will be available this Friday, June 17th, also on the board tab. We look forward to welcoming students for recognition of achievement in academics, drama, and spring athletics. And with that, I turn the meeting over to Dr. Gonzalez for district administration reports.
Sure. This evening, I'd just like to begin our administrative reports with a review of the district and school HIB grades, which are required under the state's Anti-Bullying Bill of Rights Act. Originally presented in the fall as a self-assessment of our schools based upon the 2020-2021 school year, each of our schools were tasked with reviewing their performance along the rubric of requirements set forth by the Department of Education. The Department of Education reviewed and confirmed our assessment, and now the results are posted on the district website. So again, the results that are posted on the website reflect the presentation of the fall. But just to remind everyone that the report examines our HIB programs, training, and curriculum, all related to harassment, intimidation, and bullying, as well as harassment, intimidation, and bullying personnel, reporting, and investigation procedures. Based upon the confirmation of these results, and as we engage in the self-assessment on this past year, the administration will work with their anti-bullying specialists at the school level, as well as the anti-bullying coordinator at the district level, to review the components of the assessment and to ensure that we align our work with the Anti-Bullying Bill of Rights and our board policy. For the remainder of our time this evening, I'd like to invite Dr. Paul Pinero up, who will provide an overview of the comprehensive health and physical education curriculum. As you would recall, at the start of the school year, one of the district goals was to highlight that this revision was going to take place. And throughout the course of the school year, there were questions and concerns that had been raised. So we look forward to this evening being able to provide an overview of the work that had taken place, hopefully answers to many of the questions, and hopefully as well allay any concerns that had been expressed. Dr. Pinero?
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Gonzalez. First, I should thank everyone who provided assistance and insight with regard to working on this, the K through 12 comprehensive health and physical education curriculum. Everybody from teachers, guidance counselors, nurses, administrators, the SIP committee, which has been really very helpful in guiding some insights as to how to approach it, and also the community who has provided some input and feedback throughout the process as well. So let's jump in. Oh, and I did want to congratulate Esther, Christine, Matt, Elizabeth, Ryan, and Kim again. It's always great at the end of the year to be reminded why we're all here, between all the sports and the student recognitions and the teacher recognitions. It's just a great reminder, and it's great to see it all. Okay, so tonight I'll walk you through, as Dr. Gonzalez said, the process of drafting the kindergarten through 12th grade revisions of the comprehensive health curricula and the physical education curricula, also known as CHPE. Here are the topics I'll be discussing. I'll provide some background on the state's revisions. I'll then discuss our curriculum development process, and then I'll wrap up with some information on professional development and specifics about parental rights for opting out of particular aspects of the health instruction. Let's start with the state's mission in the latest iteration of the comprehensive health and PE standards. The revised standards focus on health and physical literacy and a life of wellness, as well as helping students develop habits conducive to living healthy, productive lives. A little background. The next few slides will show some of the state's revisions of the standards. Some key differences from the 2014 standards, which have been updated to 2020. First, the grade spans that determine by when the standards are to be taught have been reduced from 6 grade spans to 4 grade spans. Also, the 6 standards from the 2014 iteration have been reduced from 6 to 3 standards. A little more background. Additional legislation has been passed since 2014 and included in the CHPE 2020 standards. These new statutes appear in age-appropriate contexts within our curricula. And these are those pieces of legislation from the prior revision. So in addition to the ones from the previous slide, these are also covered in the curriculum, also in assemblies, programs that might be coming out of the guidance office. But all of this legislation is also reflected throughout curricula and often in the health curriculum. Now let's talk a little bit about how our curriculum development process works. First, our timeline was set. Teachers, principals, guidance staff, nurses, and content supervisors have all been involved in the revision of the pre-K, K through 12 curricula in health and physical education. In March, we began the revisions. In April, we completed the drafts. In May, we presented the revised curricula to the Curriculum Committee of the Board of Ed, and tonight, we present the finished products for the board's first reading. And while tonight is a public presentation, we will also be providing a Spotlight on Education webinar on Monday, June 20 at 7 p.m. for those who may be interested in learning more. Then next Tuesday, the board will vote on the second reading of the curriculum. Lastly, in September, teachers will have an in-service professional development in how to implement the revised curricula, and parents will be notified of the revised curricula's implementation. So let's talk a little bit about how curriculum is revised and how standards are applied. I'll talk through all the squiggles on the board in case you can't see it so well. So the image to the left is from the state. So what you see there are the standards individually, and then for each standard there's a performance expectation connected to it. You can see that these particular standards fall under movement, skills, and concepts, or at least I can see that because I have it in front of me. And the image to the right is a snapshot of an objective from our grades 6 through 8 physical education document. So the one on the left is from the state, the one on the right is a piece of our document, section 2, objectives. So the way the standards work is on the left, you'll see a 2.2.8 MSC 0.1 as an example. The 2.2 is the standard for physical wellness. The MSC indicates that it's for under the category or the disciplinary concept of movement, skills, and concepts. And then the 0.8 means by 8th grade, this standard should be met by students. This next slide, again, I'll describe it out for you. On the left are the objectives, so it's the same screenshot you just saw on the prior slide, and to the right is the content, scope, and sequence. So once the objectives are aligned with the standards, and for example, that particular objective up on the screen lists standard 2.2.8 MSC, as I just described, but also 1, 2, and 4. So a particular objective might apply to 3 standards. So in this case, the objective is to apply, control, analyze, and refine fundamental movement and sports skills in isolation and applied settings, demonstrating control of motion in relationship between force, flow, time, and space. And then the line to the scope and sequence indicates that that particular objective is then reflected in units of study, or you could also call them topics. So in that first group of topics there, that is how the standards listed in the objective are met through instruction. Okay, so if we the previous example addressed the performance expectations associated with movement, skills, and concepts, and there are 13 disciplinary concepts associated with the new standards. So again, we went over this just for a second earlier in the presentation, but standard 2.1 is personal and mental health, and then you see the disciplinary concepts associated with that. Standard 2.2 is very much PE, physical wellness, movement and skills and concepts, et cetera, physical fitness, lifelong fitness, nutrition. And then 2.3 is safety, personal safety, health conditions, diseases and medicines, et cetera. So then all of that gets organized into each document, one physical education, the other health education, and it's organized under these topics within the document. So who is responsible for teaching these units of instruction at the pre-K through 5 level? Well, in grades K through 5, physical education curriculum is provided by PE teachers, of course. The curriculum is organized according to those headings on the left. Health education will be provided primarily by classroom teachers, and the instruction is either integrated into existing content curricula when those opportunities are identified, or they are part of standalone lessons. Some instruction overlaps with PE teachers, and other elements of the curriculum will be addressed via school assemblies, guidance, counseling, and nurses. Just as example, a lot of assemblies cover safety, community safety, fire safety. So that's a long-standing tradition even for most of us in the room. So a lot of standards can be covered outside of classroom. So then when we look at the grades 6 through 8, these are those categories. To the left, physical education, that's within that content, scope, and sequence, section 3. And then to the right are health education topics. In grades 6 through 8, PE is taught for 3/4 of the year, 5 days a week, and health is taught for 1/4, 5 days a week. And they are taught by physical health and health education certified teachers. In grades 9 through 12, again, on the left you have the physical education topics in the content, scope, and sequence from the document, and on the right, health education topics. And in grades 9 through 12, PE is taught 4 days a week. Is taught for 3 marking periods, PE is, and then 4 days a week, and health is taught for 1 marking period, 4 days a week. All grades 6 through 12 curricula are taught by certified health and PE teachers. So now let's take a look at the resources that have been identified to deliver the instruction. First, we'll look at K through 5. Traditionally, the PE curriculum and the activities associated and resources associated with that are pretty traditional. We go back to the idea that kids are being active. So this looks specifically at the health curriculum. So our instruction in some topics for K through 2 will include Brain Pop Junior. The website is listed to the left. And instruction for some topics in grades 3 through 5 will include Brain Pop. So that's for 3 through 5. 2 other resources that we will use are kidshealth.org, Kids Health, and Everfi. That's the Kids Health and Everfi. And these are the resources that educators agreed were age and school appropriate for addressing the concept in revised standards of promoting respect and acceptance of differences in an individual's race, religion, gender expression, ethnicity, disability, and socioeconomic background. All 3 resources are books from Todd Parr, who is a New York Times bestselling author, and his books have received multiple awards. So I'll explain what's there. You don't necessarily have to read it at all. In response, that's just a snapshot on the left of the scope and sequence again, and it zeroes in on grades 3 through 5 under physical, which is one of the overarching categories. So there are 2 lessons associated in that upper left box. So one references reproductive organs in the context of a 5th grade life science lesson on the 11 organ systems. And another lesson provides instruction on puberty, and that lesson will be taught by school nurses. The puberty lesson has been part of the curriculum and taught by nurses for many years. In the September Professional Development In-Service Day, nurses will select one common resource for teaching puberty. In each case, the life science lesson and the puberty lesson, teachers and nurses will communicate the specifics of the lesson and the resources to be used directly with parents prior to each lesson. Parents are encouraged to contact the educators if they have any questions about these lessons, and they also have the ability to opt their child out of that instruction. And I'll provide more on parent rights to opt out near the end of the presentation. In grades 6 through 8, resources to be used by the Westfield Public Schools in those grades, in that grade span, include a Glencoe teen health textbook. So we're not actually, after review, we're going to continue using the health textbook that we've used in recent years. And then there's some other resources listed: news and journal articles, health education, professional organizations, resources, current events in the news. And grades 9 through 12. Grades 9 through 12 don't use a textbook at all. They rely heavily on news and journal articles, guest speakers, health education, professional organizations, current events, etc. I should point out as well that as they have done in the past, health ed teachers will share their lessons in syllabi in advance of the instruction. Traditionally, teachers have done that in back to school night, but also to make sure that all parents have access to that information. It will be sent home, and students have access to it through Google Classroom. So yeah, here are the ways that the information on health education will be shared with parents. I'll read it out, although it looks like it's a little visible, but for the most part, grades K through 5, teachers will communicate with parents regarding instruction in sensitive topics. For example, the two that I had pointed out in a previous slide. Curriculum will be posted on the curriculum page of the district website. In grades 6 through 8, teacher lessons and activities are posted for students on Google Classroom. A syllabus is available and provided. Curriculum will be posted on the curriculum page of the district website. The same goes for 9 through 12. Okay. So here is our acknowledgement of being in partnership with parents when it comes to the health education curriculum in particular. We value the importance of partnering with families as we educate students in the areas of health education. We invite parents, guardians to examine the curriculum and reach out to your child's teacher with any questions about curricular objectives. We acknowledge that parents are the primary sexuality educators for their children, and while we encourage families to have their students participate in these essential health topics, parents do have the option of excluding their child from, quote, any part of the instruction in health, family life education, or sex education that is in conflict with his or her conscience or sincerely held moral or religious belief. And to facilitate this review on the part of parents, a letter will be sent to every parent guardian in September with instructions on how to opt out of specific curricular objectives. Okay, and here are a few points about implementing the curriculum. Professional development. In the area of professional development, all educators involved with teaching the revised CHPE curricula will participate in in-service training in September to prepare them for implementation. They will take a deep dive into the legislative updates, the revised CHPE policy, the revised standards, and new units of study, and how to work with parents who may want to opt out of certain aspects of health instruction. So let's review. The focus of the new New Jersey Student Learning Standards is to promote awareness of healthy behaviors. Our revisions are age appropriate. The CHPE curricula will be posted on the district website once approved by the BOE. Parents are encouraged to review the curricula. Teachers will be provided professional development in September to prepare them to implement. Teachers will receive professional development in September, and parent guardians will be provided guidance in September on how to request an alternative assignment, i.e. opt out. Again, quote, of any part of instruction in health, family life education, or sex education that is in conflict with his or her conscience or sincerely held moral or religious belief. And tonight's presentation is, while tonight is an overview, we would like to provide additional opportunities for questions and answers on Monday, June 20th. I'll be joined by a few colleagues who were involved in this process to answer any questions people may have about these new curricula. Information on how to register and submit questions will be posted on the district website and social media tomorrow morning, Wednesday, and registrants will receive a webinar link via email. So I want to thank the Board of Ed and the community for your kind attention, and now I'd like to open up for questions from the Board of Education.
Thank you, Dr. Pinero. Any members of the board have questions or comments? Mary?
Thank you, Paul.
Sure.
Can you guys hear me? Not good with this. Okay. I just had a question about the Everfi website. So I saw it's free, number one.
Right.
Right? Okay. And there were two sections I saw, I guess, would be pertinent to this curriculum, which is the health and wellness and social emotional learning.
Yes. So
Those two out of their whole list, right?
right. In that particular website, those resources, K through 12 health, there are two. One is specifically regarding nutrition, and if I recall, the other one had to do with anti-bullying.
Yes. Okay. And then you may have said this and I missed it, but the health ed in K to 5, can you just tell me one more time, like how often they get it and who teaches that again?
Right. So because we don't and haven't had a dedicated like health period in the course of the day, what we will be doing is the teachers are the primary deliverers of this instruction that might not be covered in other areas, like I mentioned, safety
Like
and
under
assemblies
science
and all.
or?
Correct.
Right.
So yeah, that's an important point. So a lot of it is integrated into class, into other content areas, so that we're maximizing instruction, so that we're not, being redundant. So a good example is that science lesson, where typically we went over body systems that would be, respiratory and all of that. This would include respiratory and the organ systems, including a reference to reproductive organs. So that one is something that we'll be letting parents know about in advance, as well as the puberty lessons. So in the classrooms, the lessons might be, another good example would be, we've done a civics lesson that included focus on families. Families have been a focus of the social studies curriculum for a while now, and much of it overlaps with the new standards or the revised standards for health. And what we found when we met as a group was that a couple of the teachers were able to pinpoint the exact unit that they use in social studies, and then in that context of families overall, we would incorporate the standard that reinforces the idea of dignity for all kinds of families, socioeconomic, blended, mixed, that kind of thing. But what I really like about those particular Todd Parr books is everything is contextualized. It's not singled out. And so I think those are really, I think people will really like those selections. So it can be integrated, or it could be a standalone lesson. The puberty lesson is obviously standalone
Right.
with nurses.
And then I know in the past, when my kids went through K to 5, the nurse did more than puberty, or at least that was the impression parents got. Is that different now than
Yes.
it used to be? Because-
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. In the past, the nurses did the heavy lift of most of the health curriculum. And what we had found is, especially in more recent years, as more and more nurses would needed to be in their offices, they would be called back out as they were providing the instruction. And it just became, and then pandemic. So
Yes.
in developing, this curriculum, we took all of that into account and realized that rather than pulling out one nurse in one building, let's say 5 times for one grade to do all those sections, that we would provide our classroom teachers with the professional development to be able to cover a few of these topics. Really, when you consider the grade spans, K through 2 and 3 through 5, and look at all of those topics, they can be blended in, and they're not as exhaustive as 6 through 12, where you can create a whole marking period. These lessons could be anywhere from 3 to 4 per grade level, depending on how we map it out in September when we get all the teachers together. So when all is said and done, we feel we can blend a lot of it into existing curriculum, and if there's opportunities through assemblies or through guidance office interactions to cover some of those other topics, they can be done there. But I do want to, I know we've said it a few times, but I want to reinforce that if there's any kind of possibility that we would want to notify parents in advance in case it's in any kind of sensitive area that we've heard from the community in the past. If it's any of those kinds of things, we'll certainly single it out for parents.
Right, well, that's my other question, because 6 to 8, it's easy because you get a syllabus, so you can see what's
Right.
coming.
Yes.
But K to 5, it's not as easy to know when it's coming because it could be in some other subject.
Yeah, I mean, that's the challenge.
So I'm assuming like these, along with like a social studies standard, you're going to have what the health standard is that might be infused in there. And if it is sensitive, in your lesson plans, I mean, so that
Right.
a principal would know what you're doing or.
Right. So what we-
that it would be
Right. So when we
put out there.
That's one of the reasons why I liked posting the resources K-5 for the exact reason you mentioned, that we don't have dedicated periods with a dedicated lesson that can be shared, but to not lose sight of areas that we might want to alert parents to, that would be one where early in the year or even before that lesson, teachers would remind parents that these books are, that this book in particular, because it's one of those three, would be included and they would be able to see it. In fact, the Todd Parr books, almost all of them are done on YouTube as read-alouds at this point because they're very popular. So no one would have to buy the book. But I guess what I'm saying is that teachers can alert parents and say, this book will be part of this lesson. And that might be an example. I can't imagine, I shouldn't say it that way, but I feel like that's a lesson a lot of people and a resource a lot of people would be comfortable with. But if not, that's a good example of the piece that can be offered an alternate to. Because, the civics still has to be taught. We can't pull that off. You're not opting out of civics. But if that particular resource is not something that a parent is comfortable with, then a teacher could find an alternate way activity for that particular piece. Yeah.
But if a parent not only objects to a resource but a topic, it's also something they can opt out of, correct?
Yeah, but the best way to do that too is to look through those objectives because they're very directly linked to the activities. So I would be able to, I think if you look through those objectives as a parent, you might even circle a few and ask for more information on those.
Okay.
I mean, some of them are very clearly benign, if that's the right word. And then others, you might say, I want to learn more about that. And so we would be able to provide that. And that's what teachers will be able to map out for next year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for my grilling.
Yes. No. It was very helpful.
Amy?
And just to clarify, Paul, because it's part of the professional development that will be happening just as school is beginning next year, it'll be fresh in the teachers' minds to review exactly how to communicate with parents and how,
Right.
and how to talk or answer questions that parents might have about sensitive topics or questions about opting out, correct?
Right, and to quote Mary, 6 through 8, that's easy because they are very specifically written, and same is true for 9 through 12. The lessons are clearly health lessons, and they can be shared, and it's easy. But because of the way we're structured K through 5, we have to go through a few more steps for that. So in September, 6 through 12s will continue what they've done. They can say, here's everything. K through 5, we don't, because it's not every grade has to do a whole lot of instruction because it's divided up well over a grade span. Then it's not like period 3 on day 1 a student will be experiencing that. We don't need to start teaching the health immediately. We want to be able to give teachers an opportunity to go through the professional development, have questions, answer them. So it doesn't have to be a hard start.
Paul, when we started this conversation publicly back in February, the public brought to our attention some lesson plans that the state of New Jersey had been linking to their set of resources for schools.
Thanks for bringing that up.
But my understanding is that Westfield is not going to be using all of them or any of them. Can you elaborate more on what we're not doing that's generated a lot of controversy?
Right. And thank you for opening that up. Seriously, I know I made a wisecrack, but no, we did look. We reviewed those particular materials, and it was moments. And I don't mean to denigrate, the materials or who developed them. But in our community and based on not just the parent community but even the educators, I did share those 2 particular lessons with principals, and it was moments before they said, I can't picture our teachers being comfortable using those particular terms for anatomically correct terms. And so when all is said and done, the clarification from the state opened up the door to not having to include some of the stuff that was in parentheses, and that was part of it. So we will not, a relief to everyone, we will not need to teach to that particular aspect of that lesson because it's not something that our educators felt was school appropriate. That's a term that we sort of coined in our discussions.
Sorry. So I believe it was Advocates for Youth was the
Yes.
the entity behind those lesson plans?
Yes.
They're not going to be the lesson plans in Westfield.
Right. We will
correct?
not be using Advocates for Youth lesson plans. No.
Thank you. Yeah, just wanted to make sure that crystal
Yes.
clear didn't get lost. Layla, Sonal, any questions? Kristen? I see Rob reaching for the microphone.
I have one. I had a very similar question to yours, but I phrased it a little less sharply. So thank you for for getting that through. I do want to focus on the resources a bit because I know that was part of the questions that had come up. So your presentation lists multiple resources that are going to be used at the various grade levels. Are these the only resources authorized for use at this time? And I know over the course of teaching, sometimes teachers can identify additional resources that they'd like to use. How are we going to address that, at least during this first year of this newer curriculum and beyond?
Right. Yes. So first, I lost my track, but I'm really excited about my response. So you were, just rephrase it again, Rob. I'm sorry.
Sure, I'm excited about your response. So you went through some very specific resources that were listed in the presentation and frankly in the curriculum document that we were all given. My question is whether these are the resources, are these the resources that are going to be used? Are these the only ones, and should teachers find, as they sometimes do over the course of a year, additional resources that they think might be helpful, might work well? How would those be integrated into that curriculum, and how would that work?
Right. So these are the resources that have been identified and will be introduced to the masses of, to the teachers, K through 5 in particular. I do want to stress that because it's a different entity relative to 6 through 12 because of the Mary Wickens statement, that it's easy there, we can see them all. But in K through 5, because it's not a self-contained situation, I felt very strongly that to reflect what the educators who joined me in developing these, and just the fact that, health education has always been an area where you want to be careful to sensitive topics and respectful of, parents' rights, and to introduce these at home. So those resources are what are available for use now. Also, it's a favor to teachers because they're not health teachers, they're generalists. So I think they'll appreciate, the ones I've met with so far appreciate that it's been spelled out that way for them. Should there be a scenario in the fall when we meet to articulate and map this out where teachers are talking about an integration of a lesson and then say, I have this great resource, this more than maybe in other cases will be it will be stressed with the teachers that if you have another resource associated with any of the health standards, you need to consult with, your colleagues, your principal, and to be honest, myself, because, I've spent a lot of time sifting through a lot of these materials and then bounced it off of people who have a really good sense of including SIP, where our community might lie on some of this. And I think that it's really important for those kind of resources more than ever to be vetted. So when it comes to health curriculum, it should be something that if someone has another resource, it really needs to be vetted strongly. And then if someone is going to introduce that, the teacher will then let the parent know this was not on the original list. This is a resource we'll be using. Yeah. Thanks for restating it. They have to say it's been approved, right? Yeah, well, then it falls a little bit under that resources policy that says there's a process for vetting a resource before it's used. Yeah, and so that means multiple people have to look at it. Typically, that doesn't go to the next level where it's shared with parents, but I think health is different than, say, social studies or English.
Paul, can you talk a little bit more about what the professional development at the elementary level is going to look like in terms of how we're going to ensure consistency amongst the schools? And will the different grades from the different elementary schools have the opportunity to collaborate together?
Yes, they will. In fact, they'll be by grade level, and they will, over the summer, the content area supervisors have already identified in their content areas areas that, like science, for example, that's how we saw the connection between the life science and the body systems and the health standard. So the supervisors have gone through that, and what we'll prepare for the teachers in the fall are those connections. They'll get together in grade levels, and they'll talk about what the lessons that they have, and they'll talk about how the health topics in the curriculum might be integrated into that. Once that's all done, we'll have another opportunity to be even more specific with parents as to where different things will be taught. I do want to stress, though, that I pinpointed in the presentation the 2 lessons that I think really are the ones that, as a parent, I would be interested in knowing more about, and that's the one on body systems and the one on puberty. So those will be singularly singled out in advance. Others might be more subtle because it depends how someone might interpret one of the objectives. So again, that kind of information will be reinforced in the fall about how to identify objectives that might raise a question. But back to your question, the teachers will be in grade levels, and they'll do that kind of process. And then we'll have another way to be to be further specific about how we're approaching it.
Okay, but in grade levels, meaning like grade 5 at Franklin is going to have the opportunity to meet with grade 5 at Wilson?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yes.
Awesome.
Grade level articulations,
Okay,
yes.
thank you.
I'm sorry, just a follow-up question. Thank you, Paul. The two lessons that you would, as a parent, be interested in learning more about were the puberty lesson, and what was the other one? The body systems.
As a grade 5, it's a life science lesson,
right?
But specifically, it's about the 11 organ systems.
Right.
Yeah.
I just wanted to. I know because we spoke about this before, but I wanted to point out that's grade 5. That's not K through 4.
That's grade
Yes.
5. Thank you for pointing
Okay.
that out. Yeah.
Paul, is there anything in the K to 2 grade levels that you think parents might want to have specially called out? I mean, grade 5, it's easy. There have been the hot button topics since forever.
Right. So, yeah,
since long before I was in school.
K through 12, for the most part, continues the tradition of looking into, kindness, social emotional learning type of activities, and so that might carry over into those areas that are covered in those 3 books by Todd Parr. So that's a good snapshot of how an approach to Dignity for All Folks, getting more information on that. So. The K through 2, I would say those particular books are the only difference in what we would normally be instructing. As far as body systems and anatomy, there's none of that K through 2, and there's only that one lesson in K5 in 5th grade. Thank you, Layla. So yeah.
Thank you. I mean, that was a common thread among community members was, what are you teaching my 2nd grader? So,
yeah.
I'm glad to hear what we were told we were going to be teaching from people outside was exaggerated or misinformed, I guess.
Well, if we were to have literally, and I don't want to understate the importance of getting the educators together and sort of taking a temperature of how they felt the community, would respond and how that can be reflected in the instruction. But that clarification from the state was really important, I think.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry, that was loud. That was a loud. Just to sort of, I guess, sort of wrap it up, we've alluded to it here and there at our board meetings as we've heard parents express concerns or fears about what might be covered in the new health curriculum. But something that we discussed at our most recent SIP meeting last week was, the state had put out information initially, but was leaving it up to the districts to determine how they wanted to do it in their own districts, which sometimes can be a little frustrating, as you know, to sort of start from scratch and make sense of it all and make it work for our district. But I think it's important for the community to understand that that's important. And so we've talked about it a little bit, that you and teachers who teach students every day are receptive and pay attention to what community members have expressed as concerns. So although there may be districts around the state who may embrace the resources that were shared, that may seem a bit much for a lot of the people in our district. Some districts may go ahead with that and may get full-throated community support for that. There may be other districts that say, we're not doing it at all, or we're only going to do it on the last day of school, and then we're sending everybody home for the summer. We also, as a district, don't feel that's appropriate either. We feel that there's good intentions behind some of this, behind all of it, and that we want to find a way to make it work for our district in a way that we can, that our teachers can support and feel comfortable teaching, that we feel is appropriate for, and age appropriate for the students in our district. And I think that's why it's taken a while to get to this point, but I think parents really should have confidence that that the time spent has done just that, has gotten us to the point where our teachers will be able to teach your students in an age-appropriate manner what they need to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I do feel we have a responsibility to reflect the standards, but alongside of, you know, the way our community and our educators, you know, see it working best with our students for our culture.
Yep. Amy, you sort of took my closing points on this. No, it's completely fine. It would be easy and frankly lazy for us to say, we're not going to do it. Instead, your office, I mean, based on the public feedback, we could have easily said, okay, this is not something Westfield wants, we're not going to do it. Your office, on the other hand, broke it down and figured out what is most appropriate for Westfield. You put the work in to find the lesson plans that could be controversial, found a different way to teach and still meet those standards in a way that our teachers are comfortable teaching to kids. Our parents will hopefully be comfortable with the teachers teaching. And then with obviously our the opt-out policy that is enshrined in statute. I think we found a good compromise for something that could have been it's inherently controversial. We could have taken the easy route and either adopted it wholesale, the way the state recommended with lesson plans that we'd be hearing about forever. We could have said we're not going to do it and taken a risk with our state funding. Or we did the hard work and found something that's acceptable to 98% of the people, I would imagine. So I congratulate your office on the hard work that goes into making that work.
Thank you. It was, you know, a lot of twists and turns, but we got where we needed to get to, and I'm proud of the work that everybody did, and it's good stuff. I feel good about the outcome, and I feel like SIP, the curriculum committee of the board, shared in some of that, so that's heartening, and so I hope as we go to first and second reading, you know, that we're successful.
This being drawn out over 2 SIP meetings, and with people being away and on vacation, 6 of the 9 of us were able to sit in through the heavy end back work behind the curriculum document. I think we all have a little piece of it that was tweaked to a comment that we made during those meetings.
Yeah.
So just thank you for being responsive and working with us.
That's why I'm here.
Any other comments from anybody? Yeah.
I was going to save comments for after, but since we're going down that path, I very much agree that, and I want to shift focus a little bit because we've been focusing on some of the more controversial stuff, and obviously that needs to be addressed. But there are a number of things in these health standards. You know, obviously nobody's focused on gym class too much because that hasn't changed too much. But one of the things that I saw throughout these standards, whether required by the state or as interpreted by our district, is a lot of work and a lot of time spent on things like conflict resolution between students, on teaching each other how to speak to each other, on working through difficult situations in life, on life skills that can keep them, and I don't mean just fire safety, I mean things that keep them safe as they develop relationships, developing interpersonal skills. And frankly, when I was running, one of the questions that came up, you know, in the context of DEI was, well, what do you do? What do you think that means? And one of the things I said, and I'm very happy to see here as part of these standards, frankly, is a renewed focus on how conflict resolution is healthy behavior. And again, it's not part of what, I understand where the focus was and had to be, and I was very much vocal about that, as folks in SIP will know. But I want to make sure we focus on what the broad standards are, that even though a set of standards may have some difficulties and some things that maybe are objectionable to folks, that's why we have a school district. That's why this works. I've said a couple of times at meetings, and this will be the third one in a row, every time the state gets a bright idea, school districts pay for it. They pay for it in terms of time, they pay for it in terms of upheaval, and they pay for it in terms of money. And I am glad to see that this district took what could have been concerning and said, not right for us. Okay, but I'm also happy to see that this district also took the time to take stuff that I am very much in favor of, which is teaching people how to talk to each other again, and put this in health curriculum and made it part of, really, if you really read the curriculum document, it's a focal point in a lot of different areas. And that is one of the things I'm very, very happy to see. I'll end with one suggestion. I know, I'm sure in public comment there's going to be some thoughts, some questions asked about the presentation. I'm very happy to see there's a webinar coming up, and one of the suggestions I'd like to make is, and I know there's not usually back and forth during public comment, but that is what it is. But I would like to see the questions that are asked. Should they be? Maybe that can be the list that we start. I know you were looking for some pre-submitted questions, yes, ways to tailor that webinar toward what people's questions really are. I'd like to see, hopefully, from the minutes or whatever, that's the list you start from to at least get that webinar rolling, in addition to whatever happens there. So that would be my suggestion, thoughts, comments, 2 cents.
Thank you, Rob. Kristen, anything to add? All right. Mary? Sonal? Layla? Amy?
Okay,
right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Thanks.
All right. Moving into committee reports.
Reorg.
Oh, yeah, sorry. What was that name, Mary? What? Yeah. Yeah. All right, I ask the board to approve reorganization resolutions 1 through, second here,
30, I believe.
30, yeah, that's on the bottom of the second last page. Ask the board to approve reorganization resolutions 1 through 30. Can I have a second? Second. Thank you, Amy. Dana? Yeah, any questions or comments from board members on this? Dana, anything you want to address? Dr. Gonzalez?
No, just for reference for members of the public, annually the Board of Education Administration, in preparation for the next school year, adopt a host of reorganization motions that allow us to be able to move forward into the upcoming school year with curricula being approved en masse, policies being approved, professional services. So essentially the list of resolutions that you're seeing this evening represent all of those things that really get the school year started right, get all of our administrative, organizational, and instructional ducks in a row, and really set the foundation for the work ahead.
Additionally, in there, we're approving legal counsel, our audit firm, architectural services, all of the professional services that the district needs to operate behind the scenes and between now and September. So.
And just to clarify, it's really because the fiscal year for a school district is July 1st through June 30th.
Yeah.
So we need these things to be set up and running so that they're in effect and in good standing as the new fiscal year begins.
Yep, we have a board year, which is the calendar year. We have a school year, and then we have a fiscal year, and they're all different. So, with that, Dana?
Rob Bonaccio,
Yes.
Brendan Galligan,
Yes.
Layla Morelli,
Yes.
Sonal Patel,
Yes.
Amy Root,
Yes?
Kristen Sonic-Schmelz.
Yes.
It's not here.
And Mary? Okay, then it's fine. Move on.
We can go on.
Yep. So now,
Mary, do you want to vote? Sure. Reorg resolutions?
1 through 30?
No.
Oh, just, yes. I read them.
Thank you, Mary. All right, now moving on to board committee reports. Amy, with the SIP report?
Yep, there've actually been 2 SIP meetings since our last Board of Education meeting. One was last Friday, and then one was also May 20th. I was away for May 20th, so Layla Morelli and Rob Bonaccio have very graciously agreed to provide a bit of a report as to what happened at that meeting.
I don't know how we ended, so I'll start, right? I don't know if you're presenting. Okay. Dr. Weissman and Ms. Lowe were kind enough to present an overview of our special education offerings at the 520 SIP meeting. So they gave a really lovely presentation, and included in these offerings, in addition to the classes that are offered, there's a support network that consists not only of special educators and paraprofessionals, but also child study team members and related service providers. There's a continuum of services offered in district, including in-class support, replacement classes, and specialized programs tailored to meet individual needs in a least restrictive environment. Every attempt is made to provide a free and appropriate public education in the least restrictive environment. However, the needs of the students unfortunately cannot always be met in district, especially with our most severely impaired students. In that case, out-of-district placement is necessary. Prior to COVID, our out-of-district numbers were steadily decreasing thanks to programs initiated by our Special Services Department, including but not limited to iPrep, ESS, Bridge, and PrEP. Additionally, training is provided regarding different models of support, such as in-class support, and it will continue to be a priority of the district. Although there has been an increase in due process cases since COVID, this is across the board. This is not only in Westfield, this is not only in New Jersey, and Westfield's percentage of out-of-district students is comparable and even lower to some similar districts. So it was really informative, especially being in the special education field and being a board member. And if you have any questions on that, please ask away. Nobody? I did such a good job. Okay. Would you like to hire me?
Part 2 then. I was there, so I didn't have any questions. You did great. So the second part of that meeting was focused on the curriculum that was just presented. So some of the thunder from my report is stolen, but that's quite all right. And I'm not going to rehash too much of that. Dr. Pinero presented at the May 20th SIP meeting the grade K through 5 portion of the revised curriculum. As was expressed during this presentation, this is the result of months of work by Dr. Pinero, a team of Westfield health educators. I can be as definitive as I possibly can to say that the curriculum presented takes into account the standards set by the state, but also tailored those standards to what's best for Westfield students. And that includes hearing and adjusting the curriculum based on parent feedback and feedback from SIP. And I am pleased to report that Dr. Pinero and I still are on a speaking basis after I grilled him just a little bit during those committee meetings. The PE portion of the curriculum, as you note, remains largely unchanged. We saw Dr. Pinero's presentation, so you've seen where the rest of the standards are. The discussion in the committee focused on those updates, but also on process. How are the lessons going to be delivered, the resources that will be used, how teachers will be trained in professional development, and something that we didn't talk about in great depth here, but at least in our questioning anyway, the opt-out process for parents who wish to do so. We discussed that process that will be finalized prior to the new school year. There will be more specific timelines set up, again, as discussed in the presentation, for when certain parts of the curriculum will be delivered. That's especially important for K-5, where there isn't a standalone course for it. We discussed even the K-5 year tends to be broken down into trimesters. So, I think the faculty was even talking about getting that granular with giving parents notice that, in this particular trimester you may see this particular subject, but I don't want to steal their thunder there. And this is all designed, obviously, to give parents a better idea of when these topics are going to be discussed, to prepare themselves for the inevitable questions that may come from their kids. It's always nice to have a heads up on that, or to decide what parts of the lessons they may want to opt out of. And I will reiterate, because it was brought up there, in addition to tonight's presentation, there's a webinar next Monday where additional questions can be asked and a few more specifics will be delivered.
Thank you very much. I feel like I was there, even though I wasn't. I appreciate you guys preparing items to read. And just to recap, we had our second SIP meeting Friday, June 10th, and you will see reflected on the agenda for tonight, as we've discussed, the comprehensive health education K through 5, 6 through 8, and then grades 9, 10, 11, and 12 separately enumerated in curriculum, and then also the physical education grades K through 5, and then separately 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. And then there at the very bottom of curriculum item number 1 is Discovering Language Through Culture, which is a new class through the World Languages program. SIP had heard about it at a previous meeting in its sort of idea phase, and Enrique Pinque attended the meeting on Friday and walked us through the idea behind the course again, which is that because of the way we teach foreign language in our intermediate schools, it tends to build from grades 6 through 7 through 8. And students who may arrive in grade 7 or grade 8 may be a little disconnected from that process. And so the language teachers have been considering this idea of offering a course if it should prove wise, given the students that have been identified in the district and any potential improvements that could be made in teaching them, to teach a class that is a little less immersive than our typical world languages are taught. French and Spanish are taught at the 2 intermediate schools. So Enrique walked us through that. Did repeat that this is something that they don't anticipate offering next year, but they wanted to have it be available. And quite honestly, it's something, because of the way they have aligned French and Spanish through the World Languages program, it's something that could be taught in either language, depending on the needs of the district and the students that are identified as being at that 8th grade level who could benefit from it. So didn't want to leave that out. That's a little different, and it's not something that got a presentation. So that's curriculum item number 1. And then we also have some overnight field trips scheduled for next year for approval. A summer field trip for the English language learner summer program students, and then just a slight change to student intern candidate for next year. And sorry, I jumped ahead without more fully reporting that on Friday at our SIP meeting, we heard from the intermediate and the high school health and PE teachers. Again, it's not been quite as much of an area of focus because there are not as many changes, because we do have a discrete health curriculum, a discrete PE curriculum that is just really being modified somewhat. But it really was kind of nice to hear from the high school physical education team. Not every parent or community member may know that physical education at the high school is actually required as a graduation requirement by the state. So it was really, these are very passionate physical education teachers who put a lot of thought into the units that they teach and why they teach them and the sequencing of things. Project Adventure for 9th grade students is a great team building experience, and that is built on and continues throughout the high school course of study, really, for physical education. So that was, they were very patient while we had questions of the health teacher. But again, a lot of thought goes into that. So parents, when you go to back to school night next year, stick around and talk to your PE teachers, because there's really good lessons being learned, particularly about being active members of the community, engaging your family in physical activity, becoming a lifelong, physically active person, and the benefits of that. So just want to make sure we don't lose sight of that either. So that's really what we heard about from curriculum and what's on the agenda for tonight. Okay.
Thank you, Amy. And I'm going to tee it right back to you in a second, because Mike is not here and there was no facilities committee meeting since our last Board of Education meeting. Dana, do we have any updates on summer projects for this year? All right.
No, we have less summer projects than we usually do, due to our two big projects coming in way over budget. So we have a lot of small projects and a lot of cleaning that we normally have, but less than we have in the last many years.
All right. Thank you very much. And back to Amy for finance.
We did not, I don't have a committee report because the Finance Committee has not met since the May 17th Board of Education meeting. We do have 18 finance items on the finance portion of the agenda tonight, which people can, I'm not going to read them all on their own because there's a number of resolutions, but membership in NJSIAA for sports is on here, agreements between our Board of Education and the Union County Educational Services Commission for sort of pass-through services to non-public schools. No budgetary impact on our part, but sort of a reporting and recording requirement by the state. There's also some information about bus contracts on here. There are some small changes with regard to the food service contracts for next year. We have a contract with Chartwells that has actually guaranteed revenue to us, which is lovely. So for all the talk that we have about finding alternate revenue streams, it's nice to know we actually still have some here. So for continuing the contract with them, they are guaranteeing a return to us, which is a little less than it has been, but still very helpful. And due, unfortunately, to inflationary costs, there's going to be some slight adjustments to the price of meal service at the various levels of school. I don't believe free and reduced lunch, well, obviously free lunch would not be changed, but reduced lunch prices are the same as well.
Correct.
Right. And that's pretty much it.
Yeah. Just to note, the price of a meal at the high school is currently the same price as it was in 2002. So the fact that we've been able to hold it steady for 20 years is remarkable, and the increase is just to keep pace with inflation. Thank you, Amy. Now, the Policy Committee report. Policy Committee met on June 6th, so a week ago. You'll see, I believe, 20 policies up for first reading on the agenda tonight. I want to call out several of them, specifically the two changes to our bylaws. First, I'm recommending the board amend our board committees bylaw 0155. We spent a lot of time internally discussing the best and most efficient use of board committees. Currently, we have 7 spelled out in our bylaws, and we're proposing to reduce that down to 3 standing committees, 2 ad hoc committees, the 3 standing committees would be a combination of, or combining facilities and finance into one committee. There's nothing that the facilities committee can do that doesn't intimately impact the budget, and it all originates out of Dana's office anyway. So combining that to one combined committee seems to make the most sense for us. Maintaining a curriculum instruction and program committee as is, and expanding out the policy committee to include personnel, governance, and legislation. As we round out our policy audit, where we've gone through well over 100 policies since January, we are going to have some time on our hands, and that's where we can use our resources best to work on job descriptions under personnel, or advocate on behalf of the district for changes to the legislation, to changes in legislation or other needs of the district to the legislature, whether it be resolutions or keeping apprised of legislation that's coming down our way. So those are the changes to the standing committees. We'd have an ad hoc committee for long-range planning, which the way it's been structured for the last couple of years, I'd like to continue, which would be the chairs of each committee and the board president acting as a coordinating committee among the board committees, along with the district administration. And then negotiations would be ad hoc as needed to ensure that we have 5 labor unions that we have to negotiate with on a revolving basis, and we need a team to negotiate on behalf of the district. So any questions from board members on the changes to the committee structure? We currently have separate policy, separate committee for finance and facilities, so that's combining two together. We also have a communications and technology committee that hasn't met in a year because we haven't found a purpose for it. So keeping the staff, keeping a regular committee that we aren't utilizing is a misallocation of our time and resources. What?
And district administrator.
Oh, absolutely. All of these committees are an hour or two out of our time, but they're a day out of an administrator's time to prep for. It's not fair to have them meet when needlessly just to check a box to meet once a month as a committee. Any questions, comments, concerns about this new committee structure? I mean, right now we're all sitting on 2 or 3 committees. That will be reduced. We'll go down to one or 2 committees per board member.
Just when I read it today in so legislation's not on here, but that's part of number 3, part of policy?
Yes.
Okay.
Sure. I think, in light of the presentation we had a few weeks back, probably a couple months by now, with Gwen Thornton, the New Jersey School Boards Association representative, I think, 2 things that came out of that were discussed in the policy committee. One is that communications is going to be a critical component for all of us. So the recommendation by the field representative was that we look to possibly have that as a separate committee. And the reality is that I think in the work that we're doing, as evidenced by, even the conversation this evening, is that each of the committees have a communication responsibility. So that rather than having it a standalone committee for a communications committee to talk about the communications of what took place in the curriculum committee, the curriculum committee would integrate into their working, structure an aspect of their report that would highlight what are the key messaging components, what are the key questions that we want to make answered, how do we want to get this information out to the stakeholders, how do we want to gather feedback, so that really communications separately would be combined into everyone's responsibility. Likewise, legislation was something that was brought up, I think, in general. It was brought up as it relates to the several, Department of Education or legislative mandates that are out there that are unfunded, as a means to be able to sort of coordinate, our efforts and organize the district in being able to, identify opportunities to pass resolutions to express our positions on things. But likewise, I think putting that as a component of each committee also puts the onus of responsibility for each committee to sort of monitor the appropriate legislation relative to curriculum and instruction, finance and facilities, so that we're sort of keeping our finger on the pulse of everything. But ultimately, the governance committee, the policy governance and personnel committee would still be able to maintain that overarching responsibility to be able to take any proposed resolutions and sort of put them forth to the board for approval. But really trying to share that responsibility across all committees.
So, I mean, it's fewer committees, but yeah, thank you. It's fewer committees, but each committee will have more under its domain. Committee chairs will be encouraged to utilize co-chairs or vice chairs to help with these additional communications and legislation responsibilities. I don't propose putting that in the bylaw. It would just be a good practice. Any objections to reducing the number of committees? Down to 3? Oh, sorry.
No objection, but I do want to highlight some of what we're transitioning or proposing we transition to has sort of started to evolve over the course of the year. A perfect example is how policies used to be the responsibility of one committee, but now as really policies fall under the domain of all board members, by sharing the policy responsibilities with each, committee member, they share in the opportunity to shape the policies of the district. Similarly, when you think about, even finance and facilities, there's certainly a very specific committee responsibility, but when it comes to making decisions about curriculum and instruction and fiscal needs associated with developing a program of studies, adopting resources, or devising professional development. You can see that there's also a connection to finance there that ultimately even addresses issues related to facilities as to why we do or don't have certain programs in the district. So we're really trying to sort of give people the ability to specialize, but still maintain the ability to have some outreach into the other aspects of what we all have responsibility for.
Exactly. Rob?
So I'm not going to object to reducing a number of committees. I see the communications and legislation part a little bit differently. And I'm going to try to think that we're not merging finance and facilities because I sit on both and Dana only wants to see me once a month. So, but she's not saying no. I think the internal stuff makes some sense, but one of the things that I think we need to consider from a communications perspective isn't so much how we're talking among ourselves, it's how we're speaking and relating with the public. And my focus for having a committee on communications and legislation would be more for that type of outreach as opposed to worrying about what we're doing inside. I get the logic, I get the reasoning, and as with any change to policy, the devil's always in the details and the implementation. So as we figure out over the summer how to make the 3 committees work, which, when it comes to constitutions and bylaws, I'm a minimalist. You set up what you have to do, and then you make it flexible enough to work. That's my social studies lesson for the day. I would like us to consider a couple things. Number one is a potential ad hoc committee, and again, it's not something you need to vote on here, but it seems like an appropriate time to mention it, that would focus on external communications and legislation, maybe to last for a short period of time, even a year, until we can find out how best to integrate those important topics into the committees that will stand. The second thing that I'm interested in, and this is just something that's come up from being on the board, when our committees meet, we tend to meet pretty close to board meetings, and that gives us not sometimes a whole lot of time to discuss among ourselves, to even read committee reports that we are now doing for each other, so that we can educate each other on these committees. And especially if some of us are only going to be sitting on one, or maybe 2, I think, again, this is more practice than I would say bylaw, but I'd like to see us get to a habit, I guess, of trying to get these committee meetings done, maybe within a week of a board meeting, so that there's time for us to speak amongst ourselves, maybe get some feedback from the public on things, and from within the district, frankly, and make sure that we're not, we're not rushing to try and get something done, and really burdening district representatives as well and administrators, to try to say, hey, I have this question, can you get me the answer in 16 hours? So those are really, I think I'm just down to 2. Those are really the 2 things that I'm mostly interested in seeing, most of which I hope would be able. Oh, I remember what the third one was. Hang on. We had also talked from a communications perspective about having sort of a parents group that we can bounce things off of. Not for everything, but it's something I mentioned, I think, during my first meeting, and I want to reiterate, a parents council of sort, a parents committee, maybe something through the PTOs, where we can, get a group of folks together and just, get even greater feedback. It's a system that way. So again, nothing to put in a bylaw, but something to consider from an ad hoc or communications perspective. And maybe that's the first task of a communications ad hoc committee. But that's where I stand on that.
Thank you, Rob. Kristen?
And just to follow up on that, I think one of the reasons, and correct me if I'm wrong, for policy, that we went, because I was in favor of a communications committee too, but we decided that it was best to go to the 3 committees. One, because we were going to spread the love per se, and let the different committees take on the role of communications, but also because Dr. Gonzalez and your team plan on putting together a communication plan for the district, and because most of that is an administrative type of responsibility, that's something that you're working on, and then you'll share with us, and we'll, we'll have the opportunity to provide feedback and whatnot on that. Correct? Okay.
Yep. And it's 3 standing committees. There's always going to be ad hoc committees, special committees. If we wind up moving to an April election, there's going to be a whole lot of communication from the board that has to be synchronized and pushed out to the public. So it will be, communications will, whether it's through other committees or a standalone committee that meets as needed, will not be neglected. Okay. So with the change to the committee structure, we now have to go back and revisit for the second time this year bylaw 0164, which is our conduct of board meetings. This is simply to update the order of the agenda to reflect the change to to committee names and the reports that will be given. This new format seems to be working very well for us. Do the discussion, hear from the public, then go into voting. We're not changing that at all, just purely updating the names. So we're not listing off committees that don't meet or that can't give reports. The last policy that I'm going to address is our student code of conduct. We met as a committee with members of the public to hold a hearing on our student code of conduct. It's an annual review that's required by statute. And from that, we found several changes that were necessary to our student code of conduct, reflecting current needs of the community. The biggest change is to the table of infractions that lists types of infractions and the possible interventions or punishments that can be doled out at the secondary level, and then there's a second table for the elementary level. The elementary level is very focused on educating the students and restorative justice practices, helping the kids understand why that was wrong, not immediately punishing. As students get older, the interventions become more punitive. We've added a sixth tier to the student code of conduct for infractions. These would be for the most severe offenses. Just reading off what number 6 is, the minimum is a 10-day out-of-school suspension, filing a police report if necessary, a Board of Education hearing before a student's allowed back for certain offenses. That's where the parents would come with their student to us in private session and plead their case to come back to school. An inability to participate in athletics. And then on the higher end, suspension longer than 10 days. Referral to the county prosecutor or expulsion. Those are the most severe penalties. We hope to never implement any of them. But specifically with our worst offenses, assault, sexual assault, possession of weapons, arson, pulling a fire alarm, or really the impetus behind this change was the hate graffiti that we've had in our schools for the last several years, but it's been brought to our attention most over the last year. All of those offenses that I listed off are tier 5 or 6. They're the most severe penalties we can hand out. As a board, we can't catch the kid that's doing the graffiti. We have policy. Our policy is the only tool we as a board have at our disposal. And we need to send a message. Other minor changes, just cleaning up interventions so that there's a clear transition from one to the other. The formatting is the same. We added restitution to every single tier so that if somebody is caught vandalizing, they have to either pay for it or clean it. If somebody steals from another student, they have to return or reimburse. Really going back to that restorative justice kind of mindset, fix it, then worry about punishment. So this is the largest change we've had to this policy in several years. Any questions or comments from board members? All right, I'm tired of hearing myself talk, so with that, I will turn it over to the public because we have no other committee reports. What? Okay, yeah. During this portion of the meeting, district residents and staff are invited to address the Board of Education on agenda action items only. The board requests that individuals state their name and address for the record, the specific action items they're commenting on, and asks that all remarks be directed to the board president or designee and not to individual members or staff. The board asks that members of the public be courteous and mindful of the rights of other individuals when speaking. Specifically, comments regarding personnel matters are discouraged and cannot be responded to by the board. Students and employees have specific legal rights afforded by the laws of New Jersey, and the board bears no responsibility nor will it be liable for any comments made by members of the public. If a matter concerning a district staff member is of interest or concern to a resident, the matter should be referred to the responsible building principal, the superintendent of schools, or the Board of Education, either by telephone, letter, or email. Although the board may not respond to items raised during this public forum, all public comments will be considered. Please note that if any member of the public becomes disruptive during the meeting, the board president may terminate the participant's statement. Continued disruptions may result in the removal from the meeting or adjournment of the meeting. And each speaker's statement will be limited to 3 minutes in duration. If you'd like to address the board on any action items, please come to the podium now.
Hello, my name is Janelle. I live on Village Circle. One question I have, and I just wanted to get some clarification. There's a webinar for the new health and physical education curriculum that we're looking at. Is that only on Monday from 7 to 8, or is that also going to be spread out?
Yeah, please. Okay. Typically, we answer at the end. That's why I apologize.
Oh,
I
okay.
was looking around. So, no, the webinar is scheduled for Monday, but it's recorded.
Okay.
So that we will post it online for anyone who missed it. They would be able to see the content and see the Q&A as well.
Okay, and the questions I have are referring to that. Should I submit that to be held for that date?
That would be fine. You're more than welcome to present those questions here just for the record, but certainly for the presentation, when you register, if you submit those questions, they'll be incorporated into the presentation.
Fantastic. I do have them written down. I can give them to you.
Okay.
The primary questions I do have is we're talking a lot about parents having the opportunity to opt through the kindergarten through 5th grade, and that it's going to be blended in. The primary question I have is if the child's parent does decide to opt them out, where does the child go? Is there a specific lesson that's going to be taught to the child or children that do opt out? We were talking about earlier that it's going to be blended into the school curriculum. If the child's being removed, is the child then missing that curriculum material for that class? Which as an educator would concern me, as well as it should concern parents if they're being removed from a blended lesson. What happens then? And who's going to be covering these opt-out classes? Does faculty and staff have to be hired? Do you need me to slow down? I'm sorry.
No.
Okay. And that's a huge primary concern, obviously, for elementary. I know there's not a specific PE or health teacher that's going to be teaching this. It is going to be the responsibility of the elementary teacher. Teaching elementary school for many years, we have a lot of demands, as do all the teachers. I think a huge concern I have for the educational staff is they're going to have to be pulled out for professional development. If they're being removed for professional development to meet with other grade levels from other schools, does that mean that we then have to have a substitute teacher brought in for those times that the teacher's not there? And one question I do have, and I'm sorry, I want to ask you directly, Brendan, you were mentioning before that there's a financial penalty. So if the district decides not to adopt and move forward, are we penalized financially as a district?
State law requires us to adopt standards in accordance with the State Board of Education for receipt of state aid.
Okay.
So-
I was just a little confused because I didn't know that this was, these standards and curriculum were already adopted and mandated. I thought it was optional for us because I'm hearing that other districts are not approving it, things along those lines. So I just would love to get some more information that if we are going to be penalized, what happens if it's not fully adopted, partially adopted, et cetera?
All I can say is what statute says, and whether the state enforces it or not is to be seen.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other member of the public wish to address us at this time? right, oh, yep. Mm-hmm.
Gary Morris, 405 South Avenue. Out of curiosity, why, it appears you seem to know that there's going to be some things that are going to be controversial. Why not make it an opt-in situation? I think that makes it much simpler, because my personal belief is there's only a certain number of people who are paying attention. Some parents are really busy. Some are working 2-3 jobs, trying to make things to live in this community with the taxes and everything. It's difficult for some people to have their finger on the pulse all the time. And if we know that some things are controversial, why not make it so that somebody has to proactively opt in instead? The other question I have, coincidentally, my daughter is going to be starting teaching her first year in California, and I'm curious about the opt-out. What if a teacher is one of the 2% that finds something objectionable? How would that be dealt with? That's all.
Thank you. All right. If no other members of the public wish to address us on agenda items at this time, this public comment session is now closed. There will be a chance to address us on any topic in a few minutes. With that, I ask the board to approve the minutes of the May 17th, 2022 meeting and the executive session minutes on May 17th. Can I have a second? Thank you, Layla. All in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions?
I'm going to abstain. Since I wasn't here, I'll abstain.
Thank you, Amy. I now ask the board to approve governance items number 1 and 2. Can I have a second? Thank you, Sonal. Governance item number 1 is to affirm the superintendent's decision in HIB incidents 22E15, 22E16, 22E17, 22E18, 22T01, and 22WI01. And governance item number 2 is the revisions to the 2022-2023 school year calendar. We approved this back in January initially, and now we've added a footnote at the bottom spelling out what days this will be given back if we don't have snow days. I believe those were the only changes.
I think we also added the time, the schedule for the school
Yes.
the school day.
Yes, the school bell, the
Yes.
start and end times for each school are attached to the calendar now. In accordance with a policy change that we had at our last meeting, the board now approves the start and end time as well as the calendar for the year in one motion. All right. Any questions? All right. Dana?
Rob Bonaccio,
Yes.
Brendan Galligan.
Yes.
Layla Morelli. Sonal Patel.
Yes.
Amy Root.
Yes.
Kristen Sonic-Schmeltz.
Yes.
Mary Wickens.
Yes.
Thank you. And I now ask the board to approve personnel items number 1 through 29. 29 was added this afternoon as an addendum. Can I have a second? Thank you, Layla. Dr. Gonzalez, I believe we just have one retirement.
Yes, this evening I am announcing with regret the retirement of Maureen Mazzarese, our Director of School Counseling, after a 34-year career in Westfield. In 1988, Maureen came to the high school as a health education teacher and transitioned to being the first student assistance counselor after 8 years. As a student assistance counselor and further as a guidance counselor, Maureen fulfilled her duties to an exemplary level, including individual and group counseling, drug and alcohol use and abuse education, depression and grief counseling. She has helped countless students who seek her out with school phobia, anxiety disorders, anger management, and the variety of stresses that students face. For the last 8 years, Maureen has been an invaluable resource and leader in her role as the Director of Counseling. She has made lasting contributions to her peers, colleagues, and to thousands of Westfield students and to the community. Maureen will be profoundly missed, and we wish her a happy and healthy retirement.
Thank you, Director Gonzalez. I too want to wish Maureen Mazarius a happy, healthy, and long retirement. I met her as a student, as a SAC, when she was our student assistance counselor, and her, in conjunction with her husband, Al Lantis, were surrogate parents to me while I was in the high school building. I still stay in touch with both of them to this day, and I do wish them the best retirement they can have at their lake house in Maine. Any questions or comments on personnel? All right.
Rob Bonaccio,
Yes.
Brendan Galligan.
Yes.
Layla Morelli.
Yes.
Sona Patel.
Yes.
Amy Root.
Yes.
Kristen Sonic-Schmeltz.
Yes.
Mary Wickens.
Yes, but I abstain on item 18.
All right. Amy?
All right, I would like the board to consider finance and facilities, items 1 through 18. Could I have a second? Thank you, Sonal. Again, as I kind of alluded during the report, number of contracts, resolutions about joint purchasing agreements, that kind of thing. But I do want to call out specifically also, in item 15, we would like the board to accept the following generous donations from the Jefferson Dads Club, 2 picnic tables for Jefferson Elementary School students to use for a value of $2,800. From Natural Green Lawn Care, the installation of an irrigation system for the front lawn of Tamaqua Elementary School for a value of $11,575. And from the Washington Elementary PTO, $3,300 to be used towards the purchase of new chorus risers at Washington Elementary School. As we say every time, we're really grateful for the support of community groups such as this, school groups such as this, who allow us to do more than we can do with the regular budget, which we've certainly heard a lot about this year. So we're very grateful, and we thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions or comments about finance items? No? Okay, Dana?
Rob Bonaccio,
Yes.
Brendan Galligan.
Yes.
Layla Morelli.
Yes.
Sonal Patel.
Yes.
Amy Root.
Yes.
Kristen Sonic-Schmeltz.
Yes.
Mary Wickens.
Yes.
All right. I ask the board to approve policy and legislation items number 1 and 2. Can I have a second? Thank you, Kristen. Policy item number 1 is 18 policies for first reading and the regulations attached to. We discussed the 3 that are the most significant. The rest of them are, almost all of them are mandatory policies mandated by the state. And when a policy is mandated by the state, we've taken the approach of adopting model policy language because those are policies that we have to comply with state standards over. So if there are any questions, no. If not, Dana?
Rob Bonaccio,
Yes.
Brendan Galligan.
Yes.
Layla Morelli. Yes. Sonal Patel.
Yes.
Amy Root.
Yes.
Kristen Sonic-Schmeltz.
Yes.
Mary Wickens.
Yes.
All right. Amy, back to you.
Okay, all right. I would like the board to consider curriculum, instruction, and program items number 1 through 4. Could I get a second? Thank you, Rob. Again, curriculum item number 1 is to approve for first reading attached curricula for comprehensive health education, 1 bundle for health education for grades K through 5, a separate one for health in grades 6 through 8, and then separate ones for grades 9, 10, 11, and 12. And then for physical education, 1 curriculum bundle for grades K through 5 and separate ones for grades 6 through 12. And then also, again, the World Languages course, Discovering Language Through Culture, an 8th grade course. And then, again, several field trips, 1 for the summer and a change to student-teacher organization, so. Oh, did I forget to ask for a second? Sorry. Okay,
No,
you seconded
Rob-
again.
Rob already seconded.
Rob seconded. I'm so sorry. You're thirding it. That's good. That's fine. Okay, if there are any comments or questions, I know we talked a lot about it earlier, but if there's anything else anybody wants to add, now's the time from the board. Nope. Okay. Dana?
Rob Bonaccio,
Yes.
Brittany Galligan,
Yes.
Leila Morelli, Sonal Patel,
Yes.
Amy Root,
Yes.
Kristen Sonic-Schmelz,
Yes.
Mary Wickens.
Yes.
Thank you. I ask the board to note the notes for the record. And I will specifically call out that on the note for the record, we have policy 5250, which is excusal from class or program. This is our district policy for opting out. We didn't need to make any changes to it because the state law hasn't changed since 1973. But we did want to note that we've reviewed it. It's something we're current with, and it's a framework. The board policy is a framework that will allow the district administrators to tailor the opt-out form, or however the district decides to receive opt-outs will be in accordance with policy. Policy is broad enough to allow them whatever format they deem necessary. So, unfinished business. 2 meetings ago, we started our discussion of moving our school board elections to November, along with from November to April, along with allowing the public to vote on our budget. Under unfinished business, that's there. If we'd like to continue that conversation, now.
I just want to highlight that this evening we're going to be convening as a board into executive session to confer with board counsel regarding this specific matter that we've been talking about for several meetings now, really with the intent that any action that would come before the board, if it were to take place prior to the end of the school year, would be at next week's meeting. One of the things that we would seek from the board is just consensus as to whether or not we proceed. And if so, the plan would be that at any board meeting where the resolution would be presented for a budget vote, myself and the business administrator, Dana Sullivan, would do a presentation as well for the public. As we've spoken about it in general terms, we'd like to really formalize the information so that the public who are present, public who are watching either live or recorded, would have a better context as to what the matter entails and the rationale behind it, the impact, and so on and so forth. So I just wanted to put that context out there.
Yep. Any comments from board members now? All right. We will convene in private session later, discuss with council as to the mechanics of how this will all work, and then report back out for next week. Any new business? Or any other old business, I should say. All right, any new business? Liaison reports. Sonal.
I attended Franklin's general PTO meeting on May 24th. The board was there, as well as Dr. Duncan, the principal, and they voted their new board for the 22-23 school year. They also highlighted a lot of the activities that they've done this year, such as Family Fun Night, the Franklin Bash, Field Day, Math Night, and some cultural arts assemblies at each grade level. So they were very excited to bring these activities back, and they're looking forward to bringing back more next year.
Thank you, Sonal. Amy?
Yep, I was just going to chime in. The last high school PTSO meeting of the year is tomorrow, so I'll be in attendance with that. And I met with the Franklin, the new board, last week. And again, and then also I attended, the PTC did not have a general meeting this month, but they did have a meeting of the presidents and the incoming presidents. And it was an in-person meeting, which I don't think the PTC has done all year. So that was kind of a nice opportunity to see people outside. And I think everyone has fingers crossed that maybe we'll be able to, everyone is focusing on as many normal end of school year activities as possible. And it's an exciting and busy time at every level, at all the schools. So, and obviously people are looking forward to a somewhat restful summer and hopefully a close to normal start of next year. So, thanks.
All right. Thank you, Amy. Kristen?
I attended the PTC meeting in May because Amy was away. And I just wanted to comment on or highlight a couple of the different things that the PTC committees are doing because they've covered a lot of great stuff. They awarded 3 PTC scholarships on May 25th at the high school, each for $2,500. Our special education committee also gave out 6 scholarships for a total of $9,000, and that was on May 25th also. Our allergy awareness committee, I was really impressed. That's grown a lot. The program's grown a lot. There's a lot of different things happening in all the elementary schools, at the middle school, and at the high school. One of the things that I thought was most exciting was we had a student at Westfield High School who approached our allergy awareness coordinator for the district to see if he could go back to his 5th grade class and teach the students how to read food labels. And that was apparently very well received, so that was exciting. Our breaks committee hosted a breakfast to celebrate and honor our crossing guards, and it was a huge success. And then I feel like there was one other thing. Oh, Municipal Alliance. They commented on how well received Stephen Hill was. And that seems to be, most likely will become an annual program for our 8th graders starting next year.
Thank you, Chris. 2 quick liaison updates from me. Last Wednesday, I attended the NJSIAA Executive Committee meeting. The biggest changes coming down the pike there are with non-public schools. They've seen significant decrease in interest and enrollment in athletic programs in private schools in the state, to the point that now for several sports, tennis being the most recent, they're consolidating regions to a single region and 1 or 2 groups. They can't get enough teams to make a tournament worthwhile with the current breakdown of regions, and then groups based on enrollment size. None of that really impacts the public schools, but it is interesting to see changes to student athletics statewide. And then I was reelected to another term on the NJSBA Board of Directors, so that will continue for the next 3 years. That's it for liaison reports from me. I tend to talk too much. So if there are no other liaison reports, reopen public comment. During this portion of the meeting, members of the public are invited to address the Board of Education on any topic. The board requests that individuals state their name and address for the record, and asks that all remarks be directed to the board president or designee, not to individual board members or staff. The board asks that members of the public be courteous and mindful of the rights of other individuals in speaking. Specifically, comments regarding personnel matters are discouraged and cannot be responded to by the board. Students and employees have specific legal rights afforded by the laws of New Jersey, and the board bears no responsibility nor will be liable for any comments made by members of the public. If a matter concerning a district staff member is of interest or concern to a resident, the matter should be referred to the responsible building principal, the superintendent of schools, or the Board of Education, either by telephone, letter, or email. Although the board may not respond to items raised during this public forum, all public comments will be considered. Please note that if any member of the public becomes disruptive during the meeting, the board president may terminate that participant statement. Continued disruptions may result in removal from the meeting or adjournment of the meeting, and each speaker's statement will be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes in duration. At this time, if anybody wishes to address us on any topic, please come to the podium, and multiple people along the wall.
Hello, my name is Casey Laguna, and I'm a senior here at Westfield High School. This year I took a class called Global Citizen, a humanities course very similar to American Studies, which is a class with the curriculum debated just earlier this year. In this class, we had the opportunity to research a social construct that we as a society follow without questioning its purpose. Because I am someone who had extreme anxiety over the college process this year, I chose to research the purpose of a college major and how it relates to the job market. what I found was that around 50% of people say their job is not related to what their major was, and the job market is switching to demand more versatile workers instead of specialized one. Therefore, a liberal arts curriculum would actually benefit them. Now, for my senior project, I had to apply these findings to the community of Westfield. The simple answer for my research would be to tell people to advance to a liberal arts curriculum in college. Clearly, we can't force people to do that. What we can do is make sure students are getting the benefits of a liberal arts education when it is required, high school. This brings me to the reason I am here. I want to communicate to the people of Westfield what must be included in a liberal arts education for it to be the strongest it can be. Earlier this year, there was a debate over the American Studies curriculum at the high school because it included a novel called The Bluest Eye. Some found the book's contents uncomfortable as it depicts scenes of brutality, racism, and sexual violence, and wanted limits on the book or even to remove it completely. I feel that eliminating books would prevent high school's liberal arts curriculum from teaching students all that it has to teach and prevent young adults from learning essential information. I understand the discomfort behind extreme and explicit topics, but it is when we are uncomfortable that we truly learn. There is plenty of time for technical learning through textbooks in college, but learning through secondhand personal experiences are only guaranteed now and are only done through stories like The Bluest Eye. The future of students and their careers will require a rigorous education and maybe specialized degrees, but the future of our children and their connections, relationships, and emotional health will require stories like these. A liberal arts education is one that offers a, quote, expansive intellectual grounding in all kinds of humanistic inquiry. This is not being provided to students if we are preventing some humanistic inquiry about difficult topics, and it would be a shame to only learn about them from a close friend or personal experience. I am an advocate for keeping The Bluest Eye in the American Studies curriculum because it is essential to a well-taught liberal arts education, a much-needed education that is only experienced in high school. If this book was removed, it begs the question of what else we can fight to remove because it makes us, quote, uncomfortable. I'm sure the victim in the controversial scenes that mirrored real-life events was pretty uncomfortable too. So I thank the Board of Education for their decision about the class, and I hope I change the minds of people who disagreed with it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
My name is Tim Eaton. I live at 762 Knollwood Terrace. I am asking the board to vote down the Edison Athletic Field Plan, which includes artificial turf and tower lights. Artificial turf fields contain carcinogens, neurotoxins, respiratory irritants, and endocrine disruptors. Children and younger adults are vulnerable to these chemicals, which are linked to cancer, nervous system disorders, cardiovascular issues, thyroid disease, and other health issues. Artificial turf can become 50 to 60 degrees higher than natural grass fields, causing dehydration, heat exhaustion, and inhalation of gas fumes. In addition, there is an increase in turf burns, blisters, and non-contact injuries. Artificial turf pollutes the environment, including the soil, groundwater, and drinking water. Rubber crumbs, threads, and plastic grass have migrated off these fields and have been tracked into the environment. Evidence of this has been seen at Kaler Field. With respect to organic natural grass, it is safe, cool, healthy, regenerative, designed to withstand sports activity and get stronger over time. It is safer for the children using the field. We need a certified athletic field manager to improve our fields through maintenance programs emphasizing overseeding, aeration, irrigation, and drainage. And finally, tower lights do not belong in residential neighborhoods. Increased activity at night will ruin our surrounding neighborhoods with increased noise, more traffic, and street parking in front of private residences. Pedestrians will be less safe, nearby neighborhoods will be commercialized, property values will go down. Please vote for organic natural field natural grass fields, and no lights. Let's make Edison Field a field of dreams. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Eaton.
Hi, my name is Jane Hyde. I live on 2 Normandy Drive. I've been in Westfield for 40 years. I believe that sports are a great outlet for people young and old. Schoolyards and parks are wonderful areas for use by our entire community, and I am very proud that Westfield sports teams continue to do well. However, I am strongly against plasticizing our beautiful schoolyards or beautiful parks with artificial turf. I would like to call on each one of your board members to say no to artificial turf at the Edison Intermediate Schoolyard and in the rest of Westfield. Furthermore, I propose that Westfield adopt an ordinance banning artificial turf from our community, schools, and parks going forward. This nonsense must end. Artificial turf fields have not been proven to be safe. A chemical analysis conducted by Yale University found in its samples of crumb rubber 11 carcinogens and 20 irritants. Next generational artificial turf fields may use newer alternative infills. Despite synthetic turf industry's claims, these infills have not been proven safe from a health or environmental perspective. Further, the grass-like blades contain highly toxic fluorinated chemicals known as PFAS. PFAS are known as forever chemicals since they accumulate in the body and do not break down. Nearly all Americans' blood is polluted with PFAS chemicals, which have been linked to lower childhood immunity, endocrine disruption, and cancer. As a retired chemical engineer, I kind of like to doodle on some numbers. So, a typical turf and infill of a single deconstructed field, including the fake grass, weighs about 44,000 pounds. Each one of the plastic bags that we can't use in ShopRite anymore weighs less than 0.2 ounces. If you do the math, every 8 years we throw away how many bags that we cannot recycle legitimately? Like I said, I did the math in the back. It's 4 million. 4 million plastic bags. What are we doing here? I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Just to give Gary Morris, again, 405 South Avenue, alternative view regarding the bluest eye. First of all, just to correct the record, I believe it's a novel, so which means it's actually not true, but which again creates the question: then why is it being used for a history class? But the other thing is that's important to realize is parents need to have choice in these matters. I have a brother who's adopted 17 children out of foster care. These kids have gone through horrible things, we'll say. As a parent, don't you think he should have a right to say, you know what, I don't want my child re-traumatized by a book. And we have so many mental health issues out there. And I brought this up in board meeting in Scotch Plains. I read a book. My kids were assigned a book, and inside the book there was a diagram on how to build a bomb. And I'm like, in this day and age, what are we doing?
Who reads these books and who assigns them? And if we have warnings on movies and things, put the same thing on a book so a parent who's busy can see, hey, maybe this is not appropriate for my child where they're at. A parent is the one who needs to judge the appropriateness of something for their child. It's really important to keep the parents in the loop and give them tools to easily identify things. I think it's great that some people think a certain book is important for them to read, and I think that's important. I'm not into banning, I'm into options. Give parents the ability to choose a different option, something that may be more uplifting for their child who might be having a difficult time in their life. So that's it.
Thank you.
Hi, Greg Lindberg, 528 Grove Street. I am not here to talk about the Edison project or athletic fields or any such thing for a change.
That's not allowed.
I may be stating the obvious, but you mentioned the budget and moving it to a public vote in the future. I think, at least from my point of view, that is almost inevitable. I don't see a logical path forward without doing that. So I do hope that that's where things land when you've vetted it all. Certainly, I lived here long enough to remember when it used to come to public vote, and I think it only maybe one time didn't pass. I don't actually remember, but generally speaking, people in town support the education in town. It's a major reason for people moving here. So I do hope that that's the direction that you move. I think also maybe stating the obvious, but I think the one thing that the onus is sort of on the board to be sure that the public understands why the increase is what it is, and what things wouldn't happen if the money or if the budget's not approved. It seems like, given where the budget process is at this point, that's really your only choice. And so I'm glad that you're discussing it, and I do hope it's successful. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lindberg. Going twice. All right. Seeing no other members of the public wishing to address us tonight, public comment is now closed. I ask the board to approve the following. Sorry, Dr. Gonzalez. Do you want anything you want to address? All right. Any questions or comments from board members? All right. And I now ask the board to approve the following resolution. Resolved that the Board of Education move into private session for the purposes of discussing matters rendered confidential by state and federal law, including legal matters, and be it further resolved that any discussion held by the board which need not remain confidential and the results of the discussion will be made public as soon as practicable. Can I have a second? Thank you, Sonal. All in favor? Any opposed? We are in private session. Yep, we do not plan to come back into public session tonight. We will see you all next week.